Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
And I tell you guys I love you. I mean it. From the bottom of my heart. I will ride with this group until they don't let us play anymore.
All right. We're back. We're alive. We're somewhat rested. Not really, actually. Judd's at the XL Energy Center tonight for Wild Game 6. What time does that puck drop?
8:50.
We dropping that?
8:50. We're going to be dropping this puck, I think.
Okay. How many other media members are in and around you right now? Are you going to just be shouting Vikings draft takes and disturbing the peace, or what's your situation?
Our friend Dave Campbell from the Associated Press right to my right.
Soup.
If I'm not mistaken, Chip Scoggins is here.
Chipper.
Right
Chip.
behind me.
Oh, I can hear him typing.
Yeah. Let's just say the best of the best are in this room right now. A lot of star power.
Yes. All right, well, welcome in to the Purple Daily Night 2 live stream here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. The show is presented by our friends at TCL. Not only an official partner of the National Football League, but an official partner of us, Purple Daily. No matter what you watch, TCL has award-winning TVs for any budget, any space, all with stunning picture quality. And TCL makes more than just TVs. They offer mobile products, audio devices, home appliances. TCL brings you joy and simplicity through innovative technology. Learn more at TCL.com. So we'll get you updated on sort of where things are at right now. We've got probably, if the Vikings stay in slot, the Eagles are on the clock with the 62nd overall pick. So we're 25 picks away from the Vikings. Once we get to the third round, which is in 2 picks, I believe, then it speeds up even more. Then there's only 5 minutes, I think, between picks. So it probably won't take too long to get to the 87th pick. So we'll talk about sort of the landscape, who's available. Are they going to maybe draft a quarterback in the third round? And we also have the bat signal out for our guys, Thor Nystrom and Tyler Forness from the brand new Purple Daily on Draft podcast, which includes Declan as well. But just real quick, I know we mentioned this. If you didn't hear the episode this morning, sort of recapping yesterday, what a freaking blast last night at the night 1 draft party, the Surly Park Tavern draft party. We were just kind of talking on the podcast and even just in our text thread. That might have been the best night in the history of Score North, in the 4-year history. Hundreds of people just spilling out into the parking lot and across the street at Park Tavern. And it looks like, I think we're up to like 55,000 views on that YouTube live stream, including 10,000 concurrent viewers at the peak last night. So just thank you guys for showing up and showing out last night for Purple Daily.
You are the greatest. That was just outstanding and fun too. And I like the fact that the Vikings stood pat and actually made a pick as opposed to trading back, which would have been a little bit, I think, of a buzzkill potentially. So I thought it played out about as well as it could, possibly for the Vikings, but certainly for the crowd at Park Tavern. That was a lot of fun. They drank the place out before I die, too.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
That was the best part. Congratulations.
You did your job. You did your job.
Very impressive. You had one job to do, and you did it.
Declan, how are we feeling here today? You did threaten to, if the Vikings draft a quarterback during this stream, to take your like Twins beer bat. And okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's on the line. It's on the table. I'm doing okay here. I took a 2-hour nap. I had a Bloody Mary at like 2:00, so I'm doing all right actually.
What are you doing? Okay. A little afternoon Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
A little hair of the dog.
I was fine, and then I took a nap. It was great.
Old Macadac tried to sneak in a 30-minute nap today, and Maya Mackey was not having it. So
didn't work.
So here we are.
Didn't work for you?
No, sometimes it's hard to. I just like after big events like that, I just get all wired up.
Yeah,
I'm just ready to rock and roll. I didn't get to sleep till about 2:00 in the morning because that's
what I was.
You can't just come home after a night like that and just pass out.
I had to write too because I mean people needed to know not just what Sports Dad's hot takes, but what he thought as well. In print,
they need it. They need to be able to hear it. It's a full auditory.
Yes, exactly.
All of the senses need to be touched on.
Yeah, from exactly right.
The Sports Dad, but so we're definitely not going to go in depth pick by pick like we did in the first round. We're gonna keep you posted on what's happening, but we have some sort of bigger thematic talkers that we'll get into. But just for reference here, we are just about through the second round. And if you're just kind of jumping in, maybe you've had plans on a Friday night, maybe you've been at dinner or whatever it is and you haven't been keeping super close tabs, Joey Porter Jr., symbolically, drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers with the 32nd pick, the first pick. That's where his dad was drafted, obviously played there for years. So Joey Porter Jr. to the Steelers. The Vikings passed up on him. Will Levis went to the Titans. So the Titans did wind up trading up for Will Levis just in the second round.
Which raises a very interesting question that I think might be in your notebook about a Titans quarterback.
It is. Dude, I threw that out on Twitter. People are savaging me. We'll get to it.
Okay.
People, entertain the premise. Entertain the premise.
No,
okay.
no, you're wrong.
No, you guys are
never
clickbait. And then we had a little tight end run. So Sam Laporta from tight end U, Iowa, went third in the second round of the Lions. Bunch of trades here, too. Teams just kind of moving all over the place. The Notre Dame tight end, who was projected by a lot to go in the mid-teens, winds up falling to 35 to the Raiders. And then you have some names that you saw pop up in the first round, even names that were linked to the Vikings, like Brian Branch, the defensive back from Alabama. He falls all the way to 45.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Cam Smith, the South Carolina cornerback, falls all the way to 51 to the Miami Dolphins. And Tyreek Stevenson was another cornerback that I've seen mocked to the Vikings more like 2 or 3 months ago. And he went to the Chicago Bears at 56. John Michael Schmitz, Golden Gopher, John Michael Schmitz, the center, goes to the New York Football Giants at 57. So one more pick in the second round. It's the Detroit Lions, and then we get to the speedy third round. But I guess I'll throw this out. We'll start with this question. Quarterback. I think there are 4 potential paths you could, and there's probably more here, but I just want to throw 4 options at you and see what your thoughts are here. Because the Vikings are still planning for life after Kirk Cousins. He has 1 more year left on his contract. Hendon Hooker is still on the board. And then you can get to like the Tanner McKee, the DTR, the Stetson Bennett's, right? So I think bin number 1 is take a flyer in the middle rounds. Maybe you have to trade up if you want Hendon Hooker, but take a flyer on a mid-round quarterback. Bin number 2, I think, is trade for Trey Lance. We know this based on credible reports. The Niners and the Vikings have had conversations, so you could pull a trade for Trey Lance. I think if you did that, it would probably almost certainly involve Kirk Cousins. So
immediately, yes,
a whole thing.
I agree. Right now, it would.
You could set yourself up bin number 3 for the 2024 draft. So you could just say, you know what, it wasn't our year. We really didn't like Will Levis, and maybe we take a flyer on a quarterback in the 3rd or 4th round, but there's just better players. We need a cornerback. So maybe you just start turning your attention to the 2024 draft in some way. Or, and this is what you're alluding to, the Tennessee Titans basically just bailed on Malik Willis tonight, right? They just drafted Will Levis.
Correct.
So there and there's some reports that they're just kind of out on Malik Willis. And I don't know that that's a great sign if you're the Vikings, but Kwesi loves to buy low on
Chip Scoggins.
Oh, the chipper. There he is. All right, Chip Scoggins.
I got 2 words for you, Phil. Hendon Hooker.
Oh, wow.
There you go. He's
What a
weighing
homer,
in.
man. What a homer.
He's not.
Rocky
I mean,
Top.
he's not a huge Vols fan who wears his Peyton Manning jerseys on Saturdays. I don't know what you're talking about. He's not a homer.
There he is. Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune Zone. But Kwesi loves buying low on stocks, and Malik Willis was once a much greater, higher stock. So I'd throw his again.
Do you want to jump in too, Dave Campbell?
I got one thing to say. Cheddar Bay biscuits.
Oh, we are all over the map here.
Wow, a lot of
He's
inside
longing
reference.
for the days in Mankato at training camp at the Red Lobster.
Of inside references.
You're not
here.
wrong, by the way, Soup. You're not wrong at all.
I do miss the Red Lobster in Mankato. Yes,
Who doesn't?
absolutely. So of those bins, and we'll get Tyler Fornes in here in a couple minutes too. I see he's in the virtual green room.
Nice.
Are any of those bins more appealing than others? The Hendon Hooker sort of take a mid-round flyer on a guy this year, Trey Lance, and all that would entail. Punt on the whole notion until 2024, or the Kwesi MO, which is buy low on a stock like Malik Willis.
So I feel like the Hooker scenario and the Malik Willis possibility are in the same bin, Phil, which is the bin of, it might work, it might not work. You would get the guy into your system, tutor him, But then I don't think that it would be a given that he's going to be Cousins' replacement. So I feel like those are two sort of low stocks, and like if they don't pay off, it's not some type of big bust. I think the ultimate, though, end game here is yet to be seen. Now, Trey Lance would be that. I don't know at this point in time on that one. I'm going to say it's probably doubtful. But I really think that, if you drafted Hooker or traded for Willis, I think that's just a wait and see thing. But you know what? We just don't know with these guys, all of the permeations and differences. And I'm going to give you one thing that happened last night. So and we talked about this, and it happened last night, and we didn't predict it, but it certainly tips its hand to how little we know about Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell. And it's this. The approach to the draft completely changed from 2022 to 2023. A year ago, they trade back. They get more picks. We're all like, you traded back from 12 to 32. And if you go watch the Vikings video from last night that they produced in the draft room as the Addison pick is being made. And we knew that the Vikings were talking trade. Doogie reported it was with Kansas City and the Saints. But go watch that. And when Kwesi calls Addison to say, congrats, can't wait to get you here, blah, blah, blah. And he said, we took the shot clock down. And O'Connell's like something like, yeah, we sure did. And you can tell it's not like he doesn't think it's funny. Like he wanted to draft this kid. I think what we saw last night was to a certain degree, reading into what I saw, was Kevin O'Connell getting the draft pick he wanted, because I think Kwesi's natural instinct was to probably trade back. So again, all of these scenarios are intriguing and interesting, but what makes this so interesting to me ultimately is there is so much about these guys and their tendencies and where they're going to end up that we still don't know. So we could try and predict it, but I feel like with Rick we sort of knew, right? We don't have any idea. These guys are changing.
Well, in general, I love getting your offensive-minded coach weapons that he can use.
Agreed.
Play. So many people are on your defense is ranked 31. Get defense. Your offense is on the verge if you do a couple things here and there the next year or two with the pillars that you have in place. You have a left tackle. You have maybe the best receiver in the NFL. You have a right tackle. You've got one of the top 3 pass catching. I would say top 5 pass catching tight ends. Add another receiver here. You've got one of the top 12 quarterbacks in Kirk Cousins, and then at some point looking to replace him, right? Like get your offense to an elite level. So I do love, from that perspective, the idea of the Jordan Addison pick. Real quick, I want to address, there's a few comments like this. This is from Marshall. You guys are obsessed with getting rid of Kirk. Clearly the best option is to extend him. We are reacting to what the Vikings are doing. The Vikings have chosen to not extend Kirk. The Vikings have said he's going to play out the last year of his contract. We are just reacting to what the Vikings are doing. So if things stay this way, which is he's going to enter the final year of his contract, and by the way, all of the smoke and steam and reports, the Vikings did so much work on Anthony Richardson, on Will Levis. Hendon Hooker could still be drafted by the Vikings, okay? So the Vikings are moving into life after Kirk. Whether it happens with a 3rd-round pick here and a Hendon Hooker or somebody, or whether they decide, you know what, the board, it just didn't fall our way, and so we're going to explore other options. All we're doing is reacting to what if the Vikings sign Kirk to a 3-year deal, all right, we're probably not going to talk about Hendon Hooker anymore. So I just want to throw that out there because I'm getting this on Twitter too. You're so obsessed with wanting to get rid of Kirk. The Vikings have chosen to go into the last year of his contract. That should send warning signals that they're looking for Kirk's replacement. I don't know how much more obvious we can be with how they've mapped this out.
I think what people are struggling with, and I sort of get it, but I think what the struggle here is that Kevin O'Connell is obsessed with finding his QB. Like, Kirk is 35. He is, and yes, if he gets him to the NFC Championship game, he's going to probably get 3 more years. But the reality is, what offensive-minded quarterback, especially guru coach, comes in and says, you know what I really want? The status quo. The status quo is for the defensive coach who gets the job, i.e. Zimmer, and says, I got a quarterback. That's fantastic. So, yeah, the obsession with quarterback is real. And yes, I would say personally, I am obsessed because I think the Vikings are. And I think Kevin O'Connell is very much obsessed with finding a quarterback for as cheap as possible, who he can cultivate and who becomes his guy. Don't forget, too, I think people forget this. Kevin O'Connell, any coach in this league, their egos are enormous. You don't get there by being a shrinking violet. You get there by having confidence, ego, and that's absolutely fine because that's what it takes to win. But the ego being enormous also means you want to identify and find a guy who then is tied to you. Like Bill Walsh in Montana, Holmgren and Favre, right? I mean, Holmgren could have easily got there and just said, let's just start, the Magic Man's great. Let's just start him the rest of the time. But they immediately went looking for a guy who was tied to Mike. There's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. And Kevin O'Connell seems like a very nice man. Family man, seems like a great guy. But if you don't think he's driven to find a quarterback, you're absolutely crazy. That's not a Judd, Phil, or Declan problem. That's a Kevin O'Connell problem, which becomes a solution if he hits on it.
Yeah. So I still think that's the most interesting thing to watch here. They probably need more cornerback depth. They definitely need another linebacker at some point that could replace Jordan Hicks. The edge rusher situation is very interesting because there's all sorts of Zadarius Smith rumors swirling around, and Danielle Hunter's contract is going to have to be reworked, so they could be in the market for edge or even interior defense. There's like 5 or 6 things they could do position-wise.
So I think what we're seeing so far is this, because I saw complaints on Twitter about the fact that because the Packers, Bears, and Lions, although they did make trades tonight, each went into tonight with three picks each for 2 rounds, and the Vikings had 1. And so I saw complaints about, the Vikings is boring. What are they doing? That they're not addressing needs. Again, in the shift from what we saw in 2022 to now, Kwesi clearly could have traded to get back into or get more picks tonight if you traded back. Mm-hmm. But I think O'Connell said what your point is, Phil, which is, okay, we can get more picks, but let's get what I think is a sure thing at a position that I need to be the most effective possible. Yeah. That means you can't solve needs across the board, but also for everyone who says, well, 2022 draft, though, because I've seen that too. Well, Kwesi was terrible. That's a terrible draft. Those guys should be far improved players and contributing players in 2023 now, too. So, I know fans don't like this because the goal is, hey, the draft class comes in and they all contribute, which isn't going to happen. But that 2022 class, the Scenes, the Booth, Evans, guys that either didn't play or got hurt, are all going to be expected to play now. So, some of the contributions of depth that we're talking about should come, hopefully, if they don't, it's a problem, from that draft class, not necessarily this one.
So the Eagles have back-to-back picks right now. The 65th pick is in. The 66th pick is on the clock, and that's the Eagles as well. So the Vikings are 21 picks away. If you are hanging out with us on night 2 of the NFL Draft here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel, thank you. If you could click the subscribe button and the like button, it'll help us grow this channel and this platform that you guys are helping us build. It'll help spread the word about Purple Daily, Daily Vikings Entertainment. We can disagree, we can argue, we all want one thing. We all have the same thing in common. Just would like to see this franchise win a Super Bowl for the first time ever in 60-plus years. Dex, should we get our guy in here, Tyler Fornes from VikingsWire.com? There he is.
What's the jersey, Tyler?
What do we got on today here? Oh,
we're rocking Game 6 special.
Listen, it is the reverse retro. Nice birthday present from the wife.
Beautiful. Game 6 tonight. Judd's at the XL Energy Center. There will be a live Game 6 post-game stream over on the Score North YouTube channel later tonight. So check that out. But Tyler, we'd love to get your thoughts as we get a little bit closer to the Vikings pick at 87, to sort of how you see the board falling. But on this quarterback conversation, what do you think? Let's start there. Do you think, I know you're not a Hendon Hooker first round guy, but now that we're past the first round, past the second round, would you have your eye on a quarterback in the 3rd round here, be it Hendon Hooker or somebody else if you're the Vikings, or is there more value at other positions?
I think here's the thing with quarterback. If you like a guy, just go get him and don't really care. if you kind of like a guy and you'd be like, yeah, I kind of want to take that flyer, but I prioritize other positions, try and sense where the run is coming. There's always a run. And whether that be 2 or 3 guys, if we remember when Kellen Mond got picked, there were 3 quarterbacks and 4 picks, and we got the middle guy. So just wherever you think that's going to come off the board, just kind of prioritize it, but play it. If the Vikings obviously don't love Hendon Hooker, if they did, he would be a Viking right now. And they may like him enough to take a shot in round 3. I'm not a Hendon Hooker guy. We all know this. I'd be fine-ish with it at 87, but I really don't see him developing into a starter. So that's not a guy I would want to take in round 3. Like, I kind of felt the same with Kellen Mond. I tried to talk myself into it because he had some interesting tools, but he was just never that guy. Like, I really just don't think Hooker's that guy. But if they take him in round 3, the value's fine. We're already past his position on the consensus board, which I believe like in the 50s. It's a dart they want to throw. I get it.
Yeah.
So I think the thing too is we've talked about, and it's true, O'Connell and Kwesi and the entire team did a ton of work on this entire class. Like the quarterback class was probably vetted stronger than a Vikings organization has done it since the Teddy pick or perhaps Ponder. But I think the one thing we dismiss is when you do that, you probably or you should develop an allegiance to a guy or two. And I think the fact is when Richardson went, that was their guy. So like they very well might not take one because despite what the outside noise said, I think the reality is this. There was something about, and this was not just a Vikings thing, Levis that they didn't like. And the Hooker thing might have been just all smoke. And look, the Vikings did a ton of work. But again, Kevin O'Connell doing a ton of work also can mean that he thinks the kid can't play. So, like, we didn't really leave the door open to the fact that you can do a ton of work on certain positions. But that also can mean that you come away saying, if we don't get this guy, like the list ends there too. So I think it's an interesting conversation of there's a very good chance, and in trusting in O'Connell, that he actually just dismissed more guys than he said, yeah, you know what, he's good enough.
Yeah, I can see that. Day 3 and day 2 quarterbacks are just interesting in general, Judd. Like, they're not guys you necessarily love. They're guys you think, hey, maybe. It's like throwing $20 in a slot machine because you're waiting for a blackjack table to open up. Like, hey, maybe I'll strike it. I once put $1 into one of those machines and won $130 and then doubled it at the table.
Yes.
Never happened since. But every once in a while, you get lucky. You get a Russell Wilson. You get a Dak Prescott. Like, if you believe in one of those guys, go for it. I really don't love the idea of really any of these guys just because, like, the one guy I love is Jaren Hall. I would pound the table for Jaren Hall over the rest of these guys, but
okay.
At this point, if you're drafting a guy, you're drafting a guy with maybe some upside, and he's going to be a long-term backup on the cheap for you because backups like Nick Mullins is going to be $2 million a year, but a lot of backups are like 4 to 10. Like Andy Dalton's getting like $10 million from the Panthers this year. He's going to start like 5-6 games. Then it's going to be Bryce Young. Like, it's quarterback is just a tough position. It's obviously they don't love anybody. And there's a decent chance they punt it, even though I still think they take a guy.
You've just hit on one of my favorite topics, and I just pulled up my notes on this. So if you go last night, we brought up sort of based on first quarterback off the board, second quarterback off the board, third quarterback off the board last 20 years. I'm going to frame it a different way. If you look at quarterbacks that were drafted in the second and third rounds, we'll lump those 2 rounds together. So just the day 2 draft picks, the last 22 years, by my account, and when I say panned out, I just mean they were above average starters for multiple years. I think only 16% of the 43 quarterbacks drafted in rounds 2 and 3 the last 20 plus years have panned out. And that list includes Russell Wilson, who you just mentioned, Derek Carr, good solid quarterback for a few years, Colin Kaepernick, Andy Dalton, Matt Schaub, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jalen Hurts. The other 84% were either complete busts or they were guys who held their own for like 1 year, like Jacoby Brissett or like Nick Foles had a great playoff run. And that's the,
hey guys,
that's the second.
Phil, I
go ahead,
apologize.
Tyler.
I want to. I got to interrupt. I'm being told that Hendon Hooker's going to the Lions.
Okay.
I don't
Like-
know if it's for sure. I think the people
That's
have
what
been
all
tipping
the-
picks.
Yeah.
Hendon Hooker to the
There it
Lions.
is.
Yep.
All right, there it is. Yep, Albert Breer, Hendon Hooker to the Detroit Lions with the 68th overall pick. So, not going to be a Minnesota Viking. You and Thor can both pour one out, celebrate.
Yep. And he's going to be a Lion, which is even better for you.
I can't wait for Hendon Hooker to start in 2 years and for us to just absolutely annihilate him and win like 36-3 because he can't do anything.
And then his career just
This is the
ends.
best case. This is the best case scenario. He's a Detroit Lion. The roar has been unrestored to this weekend. It's truly incredible. But this is a good spot to take the chance that he could be a guy because he's got tools. I just don't think he'll ever become anything worth a true starting quarterback in the National Football League. And you know what? It's a hard job. There's not a lot of guys who can do it, and that's fine.
Yeah. Well, and then just to finish my point, and this kind of illustrates it with Hendon Hooker, that if you're second and third round, right, like you find a lot of starting caliber players at different positions. There's only like a 15-16% chance the last 20 years that your second or third round quarterback is going to be a multi-year above average starter. Once you get to the fourth round or later, 139 quarterbacks drafted the last 20 years, fourth round or later, 5% panned out to be multi-year above average starters. Kirk Cousins, Tony Romo. So this is your $20 bill in a slot machine. Ooh, and Tony Romo was undrafted. Ooh, I got a Dak Prescott. I got a Kirk Cousins. That's great. I'm also including like Matt Castle for a few years, Tyrod Taylor, Ryan Fitzpatrick. The other 95% were either complete busts or they were like Case Keenum, 1 year. They had a nice little run for one season. So you truly are any quarterback that you would draft if you're the Vikings now going forward the rest of today and tomorrow, total blindfolded dart throw, likely to be a backup, more likely to maybe even not be a part of your organization in like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it's not a great hit rate, is it?
Yeah.
But I think one of the things to do with kind of the people you're looking at, a lot of those successful quarterbacks that you mentioned, Phil, they went within like the first 5 picks of the second round. So in theory, even though they're not technically first round picks, Andy Dalton, Derek Carr, like those guys are first round picks. Like they just don't have the label because they just went a couple picks later. Those first few picks in the second round, you could just flippy do and all of a sudden they're first round guys. So I think like Matt Schaub is in there. Same with Carr and Dalton. Like I think Matt Schaub went 33rd overall the year he got selected by, it was the Falcons, and then they traded him to Houston.
Yep.
Like when you look at those things, like, yeah, it makes some sense, but I like to look at why. Why did some people fail? Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts were successful because they were massively undervalued as passers. And Hurts was an awful passer initially at Alabama. It's why he got replaced by Tua Tagovailoa. But what he did was he showed growth every single year and improved and improved and improved. And you don't get that kind of improvement with the incremental way that he was doing it from a lot of football players. And that's why he was successful. Dak Prescott just got labeled as Tim Tebow, and people were lazy. He was always a good passer. But he played for Dan Mullen. He used him as a battering ram, just like he used Tebow. And he was undervalued for that reason. And that's why he kind of fell. Like guys like Kirk Cousins, they're just technicians in the pocket. Sometimes they pan out, sometimes they don't. And Kirk panned out. Like there's no argument. 4th round pick, he's been as successful as he has. That's a massive hit, especially with the Washington Commanders taking him in round 4 the same year they took Robert Griffin III. Like, I think if you look at the why you think this, like, why these guys are failing and why they're being successful, like, I like the idea of trying to take a player that has potential for a lot of growth. And that's why Jalen Hurts, I loved the pick. But I don't know if there's any of those guys because a lot of these quarterbacks late in the draft are older.
Yeah.
The only one I really like is Jaren Hall because he processes at an NFL level. He runs NFL concepts, albeit out of spread formations instead of like standard condensed stuff that the NFL uses. But when you run those concepts, that translates. And that's why if there's one guy I want to take, it's them. But like, you're right. The hit rate is really wonky. And the guys who are successful are mainly they're undervalued as passers.
Yeah, and I think infrastructure and setting matters too. That if you bring a guy into these conditions, Kevin O'Connell as your coach, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson, left tackle, right tackle, whoever comes into this infrastructure is going to have a better chance to succeed than if they get drafted by the Texans in the 5th round or something. So that's something to consider too. Just an update. So the Texans are on the clock with the 69th pick overall. So the Vikings are 18 picks away. Just a few. I'd love to hear I don't know if you're keeping track and checking names off here. So I might be putting you on the spot, but I'm going to throw out some names based on the NFL.com best players available. So we're still a little far away from sort of pinpointing who the Vikings might have their eye on, but Jalen Hyatt, receiver from Tennessee, probably not on the Vikings radar because they just drafted a receiver, but he's the best player available on the NFL board. Josh Downs, another receiver from North Carolina, has fallen all the way down to the 3rd round here.
I don't get that.
Drew Sanders, by the way, just went 2 picks ago, linebacker from Arkansas, that may have been an option for the Vikings. Keely Ringo, the cornerback from Georgia, is one of the best cornerbacks available here. So any names that you see right now that, boy, it's interesting. If that guy falls toward 87, the Vikings should have their eye on that player.
So it's interesting. One of the strategies that you want to use when you're talking about the draft, you want to prioritize needs in free agency. You want to prioritize talent in the draft, and you just take really good football players and kind of deal with it. Obviously, you would prefer to draft for need, and the Vikings were able to get both the need and value with Jordan Addison in round 1. But if you're looking at 87, and right now when I'm taking a look at my board, the highest ranked player available on my board is Josh Downs. I had Josh Downs as the 14th player on my board. Now, keep in mind, I did everything super Viking specific. I didn't watch any offensive linemen, so I still prioritize him really high. If I watch the lineman, it's probably at like 19. So a top 20 player on my board is still available in round 3, and I don't get why. He plays much bigger than his 5'9", 171 frame. Like, he's 2 pounds lighter than Jordan Addison, but he looks thicker. Like, if he's available at 87, I take him. And that's, for me, it's like, do we necessarily need to get receivers with our first 2 picks? No. But you take talented football players and you figure it out later. Like, cornerback is a weakling system. Just don't have bad football players. Like, Chandon Sullivan was a bad football player, and they counted on him for over 1,000 snaps last year.
Yeah.
Like, that's,
yeah,
to me, that's
starter.
the bigger issue. Yeah. Like, it's a bigger issue to have one guy like that, because that's what really kills you. Like, Peterson and Duke Shelley were fine on the outside, but none of them were put in positions to have success. And to me, that's the bigger issue in defense. I love the idea of Keely Ringo at 87. He is a 5-star athlete. I think he was like the 37th highest ranked prospect ever by 24/7 Sports.
Wow.
But at the end of the day, he can't flip his hips. And when he can run a straight line really fast, and he is a fluid mover overall. But if you have like a Stephon Diggs snapping off a comeback route at 15 yards, it'll take like Keely Ringo like 3 or 4 steps to then start going forward again. And all of a sudden, Diggs already has the ball in his hands. So you have limitations there. And in a man-heavy system, I don't know how that's going to necessarily translate and work. But I do like the idea of just drafting an athlete and seeing if you can get anything out of him. Preseason, Keely Ringo is a top 10 pick. And all like the way too early mocks. The guy has a lot of talent. He's got size. He's got speed. He's got foot quickness, but he's so stiff in his middle half, and he just cannot flip his hips. He cannot change direction well. And I wonder if a move to safety might be best for him just because of those limitations. But I honestly think Ringo will be a Chicago Bear, because you get him in a half turn in a cover 2 system like Eberflus likes to run, where all he's doing is he has his back to the sideline at a 45-degree angle, and he's just moving forward or laterally a little bit. He's not completely flipping his hips. Like, that's what I think he would probably be better in. He might have been better in a Vic Fangio defense than he's going to be in a Brian Flores. But like, there's talent on the board. Like, we talked about this draft class being kind of rough. like for top talent, this is where you're getting talent that probably shouldn't be available at pick 70 because it's deep between like 20 and 70, and you're seeing that right now.
By the way, Judd, just to jump in quick, Tank Dell, the latest pick to the Houston Texans, the wide receiver from Houston, so he stays in Houston. Judd, go ahead.
So Tyler,
I love Tank Dell.
what's your opinion then of who do you think right now of the guys who are still available, to go back to your point about the Vikings' needs? So who is, in your opinion, a couple of the top players still available? And beyond quarterback, I'll go edge rusher or potential defensive tackle, nose tackle type, which they could definitely use.
Unfortunately, nose tackle is incredibly shallow. The only guy left is Siaki Ika. I've heard he's got some medical concerns, and he also tested abysmal. Like, you can't, like, in this kind of defense, like, just remember Vince Wilfork and how much havoc he created for those Patriots defense. That's the kind of guy that you want in this defense. And Ika looked like he could be that guy. I'm not 100% sold on him. But after that, it's pretty bare. You have Jared Clark and Broderick Martin, but those are like round 5, round 6 kind of guys. As far as like edge rusher, one guy I really like is Yaya Diaby from Louisville. He's like 6'3", 262 pounds, 4'5", 140 with a 1.51 10-yard split. Incredibly explosive, and he's got some power in his hands. That is the kind of player that you could actually put on the inside on some pass rush downs with like some creative fronts, like what Zimmer did 2019 against the Saints, how he just kept moving Everson Griffin to Daniil Hunter in those A gaps, doing some different and unique things to just try and attack. I think Diaby could be a really fun pick there. I think cornerback is probably going to be the spot where they end up attacking. They didn't come off the board very fast. Only one cornerback in the first 10 picks. Darius Rush is still on the board. Trey Hodges-Tomlinson, Corey Trice. Clark Phillips from Utah is still available, and I think he would be a really good slot, especially in a man cover system. We talked about Ringo. Kai Blue Kelly, who's got the bloodline. His dad is Brian Kelly, the former Buck Super Bowl champion corner in 2002. Like, there's talent. Wherever they go, I think they're going to get a talented football player. And I don't think that there's necessarily a bad position to take for this team. Even like if they took Darnell Washington, the tight end, like I would kind of understand it just because it's a value pick, but he's got a medical concern. So that's why he's still available. There are talks he could go round 1.
Hey, I want to ask you just real quick back to the quarterback conversation, because that's definitely something that could pop up here either in the 3rd or tomorrow in the 4th round for the Vikings. If they aren't feeling any of the quarterbacks that are left, or they just feel like, yeah, it just makes more sense, we've got cornerbacks that are higher up on our board, but they do still have their eyes peeled for maybe value trades. We've seen the Vikings buy low on Jalen Reagor. We've seen them. I wouldn't say they bought low on TJ Hawkinson, but TJ Hawkinson's stock has not reached its peak yet, right? TJ Hawkinson has another level. He was a top 10 overall pick. Is there a George Kittle level of productivity there at some point for him? So I wouldn't say they bought, it wasn't like he was a bad stock, but they probably bought him with some upside. And then Blacklock, right, former 2nd round pick. So I know you were super high on Malik Willis last year. And I know, 1 year into that experiment, people I'm sure are like, Tyler, what do you think of Malik Willis now, right? But I floated him. I said, listen, Kwesi, if you're looking for quarterback flyers, we've been talking about Trey Lance, buying low on Trey Lance. Malik Willis is a stock that you could buy low on. And Kwesi has a track record of doing this. So the Titans just drafted Will Levis. They got Ryan Tannehill for 1 more year if they want him. It seems like they're out on Malik Willis. Is that worth a conversation?
Absolutely, it is. And let's have the Malik Willis conversation. Thor and I were the highest in the industry on him, and we loved the potential, we loved the ability, and we thought by putting him in the right infrastructure could really help elevate him. Here's part of the problem last year, and I'll admit it was really rough. It was borderline bad, and I got people in my mentions all the time. Oh, don't listen to Tyler. He loved Malik Willis last year. Well, where did he go? Tennessee didn't want him. Like, Mike Vrabel hated him. And you could actively see that he didn't like him. They didn't put him in positions to succeed. He was in positions to fail. And I think if you put him in the right positions, there's still potential there. There's still ability. And I think they would be able to take advantage of that ability. I trust Kevin O'Connell to develop a quarterback a lot more than I trust Mike Vrabel to like a quarterback.
Yeah. I do wonder, with if he sits behind Cousins or something, hypothetically, I do wonder if you just have to have almost an entirely different style offense, and maybe you could speak to that more than I could, but would he'd be put in good infrastructure here if you brought him in? And obviously you have an offensive minded coach that would be able to work with him, but would the style of offense have to be a lot different if he ever took over for Kirk Cousins? That's the question that I would have.
It wouldn't be the exact same, no. So one of the interesting things about the offense is it's going to be catered to the personnel. And it's something like Andy Reid does consistently. Yeah, he has an absolute deity in Patrick Mahomes, but his personnel around him changes every year, and they cater to what's going on. And I think O'Connell's going to continue to evolve and do the same thing. He wants to run the football more. What does he do? Goes and signs up blocking tight end with receiving upside so they can take advantage of some of those things. And I think if you were theoretically to bring in Malik Willis, which I know there's going to be a lot of pushback, and quite frankly, I do not blame him, and I completely understand. It looked rough last year, but if you were to bring him in, I don't think you have to do a Lamar Jackson offense where they made things way too basic for him early, and then people just kind of got it stuck in their heads, and Greg Roman cannot design a passing game worth anything. So Todd Monken, I think, is going to really revolutionize what they do there. But I think you're going to have to do a lot more RPO stuff, a lot more like quick game, and utilize his legs more than you do Kirk. And I think it's going to look different, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. And obviously, we're just talking a hypothetical here. Yeah. If you think Willis could be a starting quarterback in the NFL, I think it would be worth a 5th round pick, maybe a 6th.
The price tag is so low. It's a look-see.
And you know what?
Worst case, he gets cut.
Yeah, and you could even make it conditional. So the pick that we traded Nick Mullins for, if Mullins didn't make the roster, the Raiders didn't get a pick.
Right.
So you can do something like that. Okay, if Malik Willis is on the roster all year, it's a 5th. If he's on the roster, week 1 roster, it's a 6th. Otherwise, it's a 7th. There's your conditions. And I think those are relatively fair. Like, I still believe in Malik Willis. I think if he's in the right infrastructure. I believe, like, Tim Tebow could have been a capable starting quarterback, but they hated him. They actively hated him once McDaniels got fired. And he still kept winning games. Quarterbacks need a system where they're believed in and they can get the coaching to really develop them. And it's almost like a baby. You got to nurture them. You got to show them compassion and love. But there's also got to be tough love, right? There's got to be like actual structure. There's got to be
the throwing motion, Tyler.
Yeah, there's all those little things.
Can't be this.
You have to bring along a quarterback by nurturing them and helping them and giving constructive criticism. It's a big process, but that's why it's such a difficult job.
So to go back to the possibilities that we've been talking about how the Vikings are eventually going to find Kirk's replacement, assuming Kirk is not back in 2024. Right now, because obviously we're focused on this draft, we basically have talked about the fact that the 2024 draft has 2 quarterbacks who are going to be at the top of the class. Often, though, like what we talk about this time of year changes a lot. College football season comes, guys develop, guys slide back. What do you, from your advanced work, which I know that because you're such a film geek you do, what have you seen? What do you think when this time arrives next year is the reality of that quarterback class? Are we being too narrow-minded by saying right now, well, there's 2 guys and that's it? Because it certainly seems like things could change, especially with the season in college football ahead of us.
Here's what's interesting. Like when you try to project forward with the quarterback class, there's 2 guys, and if 2 quarterback teams are at 1 and 2, you're not getting one. There are other guys who have potential, and I highlighted like this year. I thought there were about 10 quarterbacks that could potentially be the 3rd off the board. 2 of them were Richardson, and Levis. After that, like, I thought there was potential with Jaron Hall. I thought there was potential with Jake Haener. And I thought there was potential with other guys too, but not everybody takes a step. I really thought Clayton Tune had a big shot to be quarterback 3 in this class because of where he was at, how they were utilizing him, and how he continued to grow throughout the process, but he didn't quite get there. Like, you can't count on next year. You can be like, I don't like these guys that much, and I'm going to wait till next year. I think that's a good process. But if you be like, oh, I like this guy, but that guy's going to be better. You cannot think that way. If you believe in a guy, you go with it, because next year is far from a guarantee. And like that's the part you have to kind of reconcile with yourself and how you're utilizing that process. I think if you believe that next year's class could be really good and you're torn on a guy, then you'd be like, okay, I'll wait. I don't have to make that commitment. Like, if Will Levis fell to 87, even if you don't like him, I think you try it. You figure it out, because there is ceiling there. But when you look at everything, like, you just can't be like, next year is the class and I'm just going to wait.
So off that point, do you think a year from now the Vikings are going to regret not having mortgaged a large part of their draft future by not going up to, say, 3 and getting Anthony Richardson? Because they clearly loved him.
My gut says yes. But at the same time, they could have done everything they could, and it still might not have been enough. So the thing with trades, it takes 2 to tango.
Right.
Well, they got a phenomenal trade package from the Texans. The Texans are probably going to have a top 5 pick next year based on what their roster looks like. So if you only go back to 12 and then you only have to give up a 2 and a 5 to go back up and get pick 6, and you get a 3rd in return, and you get the guy you were going to get anyways, like, why would you take the Vikings pick? Like, that's one of the reasons why the trade was so hard in the first place. Even if the Vikings would have met the reported asking price, which was like 6 picks in the first 2 rounds, like, sometimes there's just a better offer and there's nothing you can do because you are not at the level where they're going to feel comfortable going down and still getting their guy.
Yeah.
So if they did everything they could, then you just be like, man, that sucks. But I think you got to hold your head high.
Just to set the scene here, we are 12 picks away from the Vikings, who have the 87th pick. We're just cruising through this 3rd round. And the 73rd and 74th picks, the Giants and the Browns, took the Tennessee receivers. Jalen Hyatt goes 73, and Cedric Tillman goes 74 here. We've been about 50 minutes into our Night 2 live stream here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. So thanks for hanging out with us. Phil Mackey, Judd Zolgad, our executive producer, Declan Goff, and our guy, Tyler Fornes from VikingsWire.com. If you could click the subscribe button and the like button, it would help us grow and spread the word about this show. And we appreciate you guys making Purple Daily one of the 10 to 12. We're kind of like Kirk Cousins, one of the 10 to 12 most listened to football podcasts in America, according to the Apple rankings. So, boys, the Falcons are on the clock. It looks like the pick is in. And then the Patriots will pick next at 76. So we're getting right down to where the Vikings are probably sizing up who might be available here. And again, you know, you already said your piece about Keely Ringo, but I think he is the top player available on the NFL.com best players available board here. Mm-hmm. Josh Downs, you already talked about him, still out there. So there's some names that were being talked about as first round picks that are sitting here in the middle of the 3rd round. So it'll be interesting to see where the Vikings go, Tyler.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You're looking at NFL.com. I'm taking a look at Pro Football Network, Arif Hassan's consensus board, which kind of just combines every big board in the industry. Like the top guys, Darnell Washington, Josh Downs, Keely Ringo, DeJuan Jones, the massive wingspan offensive tackle, and then Trenton Simpson, linebacker, Clemson. Like, there's good talent available. But those are the only 5 guys in the top 50 that are still available. That's pretty good by the consensus to be able to have most of the top 50 gone already. There's still talent on the board, and I'm really intrigued to see what the Vikings end up doing. Don't be shocked if it's a trade back. Like, hypothetically, if San Francisco really wanted somebody, they could trade like 99 and 102, and the Vikings give them 87 and like 158. so then they could pick twice on day 2. Like, there's that possibility. So I think a trade down is still plausible, but Kwesi did say you want to pick quality players. You don't want to go for quantity every year. And last year was a quantity year because so many of those Rick Spielman 2021 picks were bad. 2020, like, the depth in that class was good, but you don't have like a lot of those 6th or 7th round guys still around. So I think a trade back is still likely, but there's good talent, and I'm very intrigued to see what they do.
If they did go back, what is the talent gap there then? Like, in your opinion, is it pretty flat across the board as far as if you were to go back from 87 to get 2 picks that are later in the 3rd round?
Yeah.
Because I guess that's the question to me then.
I don't know what their board looks like, and every board is stacked differently. I think the talent gap is relatively flat from like pick 80 to pick 100. You're going to like, you might get 1 or 2 guys at the top of the 80s where you just think like they're just a little bit better, but it's not going to be like this massive cliff where all of a sudden 87 to 99 is just awful. Like, I think it's fine. Depends how far they're willing to trade down too.
Mm-hmm. Hey, by the way, I don't know, this is complete unfounded, reckless speculation, but we're amongst friends here on a Friday night.
It's a Friday night. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, multiple people have DM'd me on Twitter and have said Dalvin Cook was live on Instagram with Dolphins players. So Dalvin apparently, let's see here, he was live with Miami players. I am doing some sleuthing here. I don't know if it happened on. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, there's some. Looks like he has something on his Instagram stories.
Story, right? But that's his agent, and I think that's more of like someone I don't know if that's Dolphins necessarily related. I think because it says Zach Hiller on it too, right?
Yeah, and that's his agent. It looks like maybe the Dolphins drafted one of Zach Hiller's college clients, and Dalvin is either happy for his agent or happy for his new teammate in Miami, potentially.
I don't think it's a stretch to say that Dalvin wants out. Like, I think that's pretty safe to recklessly speculate / say that he wants out of here. And you know what? That's fine. Again, it's run its course. It was fun. It was great.
It feels like the worst kept secret at this point that the Vikings don't want to pay him the $11 million base. He doesn't want to take a pay cut. And the Dolphins are a team that is apparently interested in acquiring his services. His agent more or less said, without saying on a podcast 2 weeks ago, that, we're having conversations. And, I think he even might have said Miami at some point. So,
in fact,
Miami picks at 84.
Yeah. What I heard was that there was some sort of agreement in place. I think we've talked about this with the Dolphins, right? But it would be after June 1st.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that this is here. My guess is that Kwesi thought that there was going to be a value to Dalvin that does not exist, and he's going to have to take what he could probably get, which is absolutely fine. And I think this dried up as far as being a potential to shop him between the Dolphins and the Falcons, obviously, when Bijan Robinson last night went to the Falcons. So I would not be surprised one bit if he is either traded for a very late pick, and it might be a late pick in 2024, or just flat out released. Which I'm fine with, by the way. I don't think that's worth criticizing.
Dude, I'm getting hammered still for even mentioning Malik Willis here. Now I know what Tyler's mentions have been like for 12 months on Twitter.
People love to hate you, man.
Just ridiculous. Some guy just said, I can't take your bleepy take seriously. I'd rather have Kirk until he's in his mid 40s than any of those bums on your list. So, I mean, good luck with Kirk at age 44 then, random guy on Twitter. So, what do you think? So, if the Vikings, let's say the Vikings and Dolphins have an agreement for after June 1st, I mean, what are they going to get for Dalvin Cook? Like a 6th round pick, a 5th round pick?
5th? Maybe it's one of those pick swaps where we give a 7th and we give Dalvin in the 7th and get a 5th back. Like,
okay.
Look, his talent is much more than his value, and that's one of the difficulties. Like, you have the contract, you have the age, you have the injury history. And look, his talent's really high, but you're not getting a Christian McCaffrey type package. You're getting a day 3 pick, maybe a day 3 pick swap. Like, it's just kind of the nature of the business. And that's why there's so many people that are against extending running backs because you deal with this kind of cliff. And it's really unfortunate, but that's kind of what we're dealing with Cook right now. And
But it's kind of weird though, because
anything for him, yes.
But you just saw 2 running backs go in the top 12 picks, and you saw the comp package for Christian McCaffrey. So it is funny how most front offices devalue running backs. They're not looking to pay running backs. Zeke Elliott just became the Cowboys cut Zeke Elliott loose, right? But at the same time, how often when's the last time we had 2 running backs drafted in the first 12 picks? It's kind of crazy.
That was Lions, though, man. There was
that would
one
have been
that should have been
the Christian McCaffrey Leonard Fournette draft. I think 2017. Fournette went 4, McCaffrey went 8. But
okay,
the biggest thing with those successful running backs that are taken high in the first round, they have an element to them where they're not just it's not just that they can catch out of the backfield. They're receivers that play running back. Bijan Robinson is a wide receiver. Like Arthur Smith keeps talking about positionless football, and he actually kind of lives by it. Kyle Pitts can play X, he can play slot, he can play tight end, he can do everything. Drake London can kind of do the same thing, and now you have Bijan who can actually catch the football like a wide receiver. He's got a rep against Alabama where he completely flips his hips and uses great body control to leap and twist in air to catch a football. Like Jahmyr Gibbs plays like Alvin Kamara. Like they're wide receivers that play running back. Like similarly, but not identically to Percy Harvin.
bad news.
That's kind of what you're getting.
Bad breaking news.
What?
Wild just gave up a goal.
Oh no!
Falling flat already. Take the jersey off.
Fire everybody!
Take the jersey off. You got to change the look. You got to change the look. Upset right over there. They're giving up goals.
What's people are wondering. Like one guy I saw a little bit ago in the YouTube comments said Judd needs to fire his lighting guy. So I think we should explain to the new audience here. Judd is in the basement of the XL Energy Center here.
Yes, and I didn't bring my light. That's my fault, but I can't be upstairs because it's too loud, and so I'm actually in the place where the photographers sit, and that's why it's not good. I apologize, but you know what? It's okay.
Judd will be live
just one time.
Judd's Hockey Show later on tonight on the Score North YouTube channel.
So back to Dalvin Cook for a second. I think one interesting thing is this, and it's O'Connell's fault partially, but his intentions were good. Kevin O'Connell partially exposed Cook, and I will fall on the sword for this. I went into last season, and Kevin O'Connell did too. I know he did, thinking, you know what, there's more here. And I think we all thought that. There's more here to Cook's game as far as your point. He can receive, he can run after the catch, blah, blah, blah. Well, then we sort of saw as the season progressed, he really wasn't nearly as good in that role as we expected. And I'll go back to OTAs when a couple of outlets reported that Cook was being used basically as a hybrid receiver. And O'Connell got sort of upset and said, you guys, you put that out there, it's going to be read. I'm like, this is a secret weapon potentially. And then you think about, we really didn't see that. And I mean, Cook dropped some passes. So I think part of the problem, guys, is that Dalvin Cook, like the value that we expected, was sort of exposed as not being there. And so, and you saw O'Connell pull back quickly on that. So like he saw that too. He thought that Cook could be lined up outside, used as a hybrid, and eventually he couldn't. And I think that really, along with the fact that Dalvin Cook's aging, that really devalued him, because now you're trying to trade an aging running back who's seen as a traditional guy. He can pass protect, he can block, but he's not nearly the player that we thought, and O'Connell thought initially, which is the most important thing, that he would be in the passing game.
Yeah, he was always a guy that had potential to be that pass catching back, but he never lived up to it. He was never able to kind of take that. And outside of that wheel route against Washington, he never really was able to evolve into anything as a pass catcher before or after. Like, I really like your take on how he kind of got exposed. And I was surprised that they ended up keeping Cook this year just because of that element. And his trade value would have been much higher last year. And but they wanted to run it back. They wanted to try and make a run with this group. And I completely understand why the Wolves had that thought process, because thinking, we need a new leadership in here and we can be able to take this thing. Well, they won 13 games and you should be proud of that. But now you're kind of looking at the repercussions of not doing those things, and it's frustrating. Cook, I think they just need to figure out a way to move on. And there's a really good running back class. Only 3 running backs have gone so far. Guys like Tyjae Spears are still available. Like, you can get a difference maker to pair with Madison and Chandler, and let's ride.
Hey, what were if you think back a couple of years, or I guess last year, what was your thought in the scouting process for Ty Chandler? What type of running back do you think he can be? I'm guessing he's going to get some carries because, if Dalvin Cook's gone. To me, Alex Madison, I don't think he's a guy that you're just going to give the ball to 225. He's 3.5 yards a carry the last couple of years. So, what are your thoughts on Ty Chandler?
Chandler's good. I think he's a really good third down back because he's a great pass blocker. He's got really good explosiveness. He came out as an older prospect, but he barely got any touches before he ended up going to North Carolina for his final season. And then he actually got to be the guy, and he showed a lot. But he doesn't have a ton of power for being like a 213-pound back. He needs, like, he'll be able to do the one-cut stuff with the wide zone, and then he'll be able to burst through and get some home runs. But some of the, like, Dalvin Cook is able to kind of burst through contact and be able to get like an extra like 3 yards. That's not really Ty Chandler's game. And that's kind of the differentiator between those guys. I think there's a place for Ty Chandler, but I don't think he's a bell cow. And I think getting a third back to pair with him and Madison and using a real committee, kind of like how the Eagles do. I think the Vikings are going to model their running back room off the Eagles. 3 guys who can do multiple things, and you have a guy for every situation. And then you don't give any one guy more than like 200 touches.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Off the wall question. So, in your mind, could Kevin O'Connell or will he attempt to use Addison in a hybrid type of role at times? So he's in the slot at times. Obviously, can play. It sounds like all of the receiver spots as well. But could we see him in the backfield at times? Could we see him play a little bit of that Debo role where he's expanded into what you talked about, which I absolutely love, which is sort of positionless football in 2023?
Maybe. I think that's being a little adventurous and a little what's the word I'm looking for? Optimistic. I don't necessarily think the Vikings have a guy where they can do that kind of Debo stuff. Like Debo, Percy Harvin, they're just a special level of human where they can really just do a little bit of everything. And I think if you had Cordero Patterson, like 2013, that would have been your Debo, and utilizing him in that way. I like where your mind's at with the creativity. I just don't know if the Vikings really have anybody where you can actually utilize some of that, at least at this point.
Hey, an update here. So we are, let's see here. I'll give you the last couple picks. So Josh Downs, one of your favorite receivers in the draft, just went to the Colts with the 79th pick. So Anthony Richardson and Josh Downs with the Colts. DJ Johnson, edge rusher from Oregon, goes to the Panthers at 80, which means the Tennessee Titans are back on the clock at 81. So there are 6 teams to pick before the Vikings are on the clock with the 87th overall pick here. And Judd, since you're hanging out down there and you're at the XL Energy Center, you're a little bit sad because there might be another early exit for our hockey team, which is down 1-0. Why don't you brighten the mood here by talking about your favorite weight loss center, Livia?
Oh, yes. In fact, that puts me in an instantaneous good mood because my friends at Livia Weight Control Centers know all about how to help you drop the pounds. The Wild can't stop the Stars. The Vikings can't draft except for once in 2 days. Livia, though, they are a first-round pick, and they are a winner every single time. And here's the best part. Right now, if you join, and keep in mind, if you join, you're not only going to take the weight off, but you're going to keep that weight off as well. You're going to get the first 3 months for free. So we're talking 3 months. We're talking you are cruising into summer, a lean, mean fight machine, looking good and feeling good, and that weight stays off. 855-GO-LIVIA, Livia, LIVEA.com. Livia, a longtime supporter of PD. We appreciate them. And if you are looking to lose weight, join a bunch of people in the Purple Daily family who have done it by visiting livia.com.
And a shout out to our friends at Dennis Kirk as well, for all you Victors and Ragnars out there. Motorcycle season is, well, I wouldn't be riding today in the rain, but when it clears up sometime this weekend, you can get out there. Whether it's a Harley, Indian, Metric Cruiser, sport bike, you'll find what you need at DennisKirk.com so you can ride more and weight less. Over 180,000 parts and accessories in stock, clothing and helmets as well. Shipping is free for orders over $89. If you order by 8 p.m., they ship the same day. Everything you need for your ride at DennisKirk.com. We got a few thousand people hanging out with us here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel, so thank you as we count down 6 more teams to make draft picks until the Vikings are on the clock or until they trade. Who knows what's going to happen with the 87th pick. Our guy Tyler Fornes from Vikings Wire and from the all-new Purple Daily on Draft podcast, which, and by the way, Thor's going to join us here at some point as well, which you can find weekly, breaking down the draft this year, looking back at what happens this weekend, next week, but also just taking sort of a young Vikings player and draft approach to content every single week. But Tyler, we got a handful of picks here. Give us a few of your favorite names for the Vikings. Who is out there right now that might be a great fit for the Vikings if they do make their pick at 87?
Absolutely. So the number one guy that I'm looking at is Darius Rush. South Carolina corner, played opposite Cam Smith. Got overshadowed quite a bit because Cam Smith was a first-round talent that ended up going at the top of round 2 to the Rams. But Rush is going to be reminiscent of Trey Waynes. He's going to lose early a lot, but he has the speed to be able to make up for it. But I think he's a smarter player and he's a better overall athlete than Waynes. Waynes played very straight up. Rush is a lot more fluid with his movements. I think he has a really good ceiling. He fits great with the scheme that Brian Flores is implementing, and I really like the value. Keely Ringo's an interesting guy. That's a dart throw. That's just a really, really good athlete, and you hope you can kind of develop and cultivate something out of that. I think cornerback is probably the play here because there's a lot of talent. I also think that moving down is probably your smartest play overall, because you can probably be able to coax like 2/4 out of somebody to be able to move down. Kind of taking a look at the consensus board, Adetomiwa Adebawore from Northwestern, 4'4", 40 at 281 pounds. He can do a 400-pound hang clean. He did that in high school.
That name rolled off your tongue very impressively. Let's not bury that.
I have been practicing because I want to make sure I get those right.
He was practicing for that exact moment right there, by the way. Right? On draft night, just nailed it.
Since you were a child, since you were in kindergarten, you're like, this guy's going to come along and I'm going to nail that on a Friday night.
By the way, Tyjae Spears to the running back from Tulane to the Titans with the 81st pick. That's a name that I've seen pop up.
Phenomenal compliment to what Derrick Henry brings. They're two completely different backs, and that's going to be a really nice touch. Spears is great. Running back, I think Spears would have been my top guy. I think that's probably out of the question for the Vikings. Antonio Johnson, safety from Texas A&M, is interesting. Same with Clark Phillips from Utah. They're probably going to be slots. Antonio Johnson's a bigger football player, 6'3", like 215. He's kind of like a hybrid linebacker safety, but he can do a lot of different things. Clark Phillips, man cover corner, 5'9.5", didn't test very well, but he clamped down Jordan Addison twice this past season in their regular season game and in the Pac-12 title game. He can ball, and he will get up in your face and he'll punch you, and then he will punch you at the catch point again.
And he'll punch you again.
And he'll cut you. He'll stab you. He will kidnap your family. That's right.
Clark Phillips almost had a first-round grade for me, but the athleticism is a little worrisome, and especially in this deep corner class. Do you want to take the guy who's got a limited athletic profile? Probably not. I think cornerback is the play, especially with Downs off the board. I would have taken Downs just because the value is just too good. But a lot of the guys consensus board wise in like the 70s and 80s are going. Even like Zach Pickens and Tyler Steen at 93 and 94, they're off the board. I think cornerback is the play or a trade back. Yaya Diaby, the edge I was talking about earlier, just went to the Bucs. So Like,
Yeah, so the Bucks just traded up, right? Or no, I'm sorry, the Broncos just traded up. We have chaos right now. So Yaya Diaby went to the Buccaneers at 82, and it looks like the Broncos may have traded into the 83 here.
interesting. Okay.
People are just tweeting like these poor reporters. Pelissero just tweets Broncos trading up again. They're just like rifling off half information here.
This round.
They're so behind on the TV broadcast.
Yeah.
It's funny, but
Yeah. So it's very cornerback heavy in terms of best players available right now for in terms of like what the Vikings might look to do here. What are your thoughts on linebacker? I mean, because they're really thin there, and you got Jordan Hicks who's on the wrong side of 30. And you got Brian Asamoah that we're kind of crowning as a starter, but we've never seen him actually do it in bulk for 800, 900 snaps. So what's your sort of state of the Vikings linebacker situation? And should they have their eye on a linebacker here in the next 3 rounds?
Simpson's an interesting guy, freak athlete, 5-star prospect, but he can't really see. And that's one of like kind of the
Wait, he can't really see?
Well, his vision on the field is poor. Like he's supposed to go in one gap, he hits the other one. Like
so he's not.
He doesn't just have like astigmatism.
No, I'm not talking like he actually
the
has
Oregon
vision
Nike
problems.
The bifocal.
Troy.
We can get him some contacts.
Williamson, you could just send him. You can fix his vision, and now he's going to Canton, Ohio. Tyler.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those deals. I hear you with the linebackers. There's only Brian Asamoah on this roster next year. I just don't know if anybody's going to be worth it where they're going to come off the board. Simpson's probably the one guy I'd consider, and that's in a few picks. But other than that, it's not a great linebacker class. It really isn't. This isn't a good linebacker class. Campbell shouldn't have even gone in the first round last night. I didn't think any linebackers were worthy of going top 40. Yeah. But Lions are going to lion. That's what they do.
And that is a tremendous favorite to the rest of their division. I'm in the mood to recklessly speculate right now.
Oh, please. Oh,
perfect. Do that, and then I got to take off and prepare for the pick.
If that's okay with the room. And here's my reckless speculation. I'm pretty convinced that the Vikings have been talking about and have gotten calls in the past 2 days about Danielle Hunter, who remains a Viking and has not been traded. And I got to think if he was going to be traded in this draft, it would have been by now to get into the second round or get a higher pick. I wonder if part of the quid pro quo of the Vikings taking a wide receiver first round was to tell Brian Flores that they will try and work on an extension with Hunter. Because if you do that, he's going to be thrilled. And like the Zadarius Smith situation still hangs over their heads. I got to think he doesn't come back if Hunter does. But that's got to be one of the most fluid things, right? Because like we've talked about, would they draft an edge? Obviously, if you keep Danielle, you probably don't have to. And there's no question they've gotten calls. Like there have been talks. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's one of the most interesting questions is at what point in time does that get all cleared up? And does he stay here on an extension as opposed to being traded at some point before or shortly after June 1st, for instance?
So what I'm curious about is what if they do like the Trent Williams trade from a couple years ago? Yep. You get a late day 2, early day 3 pick, and then you get like a 2 next year. So then you can load up for, hey, maybe now we have ammo to go get a quarterback. I wonder if those talks are happening. That would probably be a best case scenario if you move Hunter. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna campaign to move Hunter, but I also get it, especially if you don't view him as like a great fit for what you want to do moving forward. Just because of the 3-4, he kind of struggled. I don't know how much you want to cater to him. Like the talent is there and he's great, but there's other things at play, and giving him $20 million a year might not be something the Vikings want to do. And that's something you have to really consider too. It's not just about, hey, this guy's talented, I want to keep him. There's a lot more things at play. You have to, that wrinkle will affect a lot of other areas on the roster.
Yeah. Well, we know you have to get going so you can mash content for Vikings Wire. Tyler Fornes, appreciate you coming on, sharing your insight, your hot takes, your Malik Willis propaganda. And
I just want to say this before I go. I would join you guys for Write That Down in October, and I said the Vikings would use their first pick on a receiver, and I just want to take my victory lap.
Oh, there it is right there.
Got a touchdown?
Congratulations.
that a touchdown?
I don't know if it's. I think it might be a touchdown, but that's
I
up
don't
to you
think
to
it's
decide, not me.
It's a
portable.
it's a chunk play.
Yeah,
It's a chunk
20-yard
play.
play.
It's like a
It's not
third and
touchdown.
12. Yeah, it's a nice
Yeah.
completion.
Yeah.
And you should definitely take your victory lap. So yes.
You're in the red zone, but you didn't score.
All right,
Sounds like the
Tyler.
Vikings.
Yeah.
See ya.
All right.
Quit,
We'll see you
quit
later.
jinxing the Wild with that jersey.
There he
Take
is.
it off.
Tyler Fornes from VikingsWire.com. And every week, now going forward, we launched a new show under the Purple Daily umbrella, Purple Daily on Draft, where Declan, as the ringleader with Thor Nystrom and Tyler Fornes, are going to take a sort of draft angle at Vikings discussions all throughout even the offseason. So apparently a skull chant just broke out at XL Energy Center with TJ Hawkinson, Brian O'Neill, and Christian Darrisaw were shown on the video board.
So Hawk was there for Game 3 last Friday, and tonight did the Let's Play Hockey thing.
Okay.
And Darrisaw goes to a lot of games. He's a
huge
become a
hockey
big
guy.
fan. Yeah, it's
Yep.
great.
That's
We're
pretty
very
funny.
similar in that sense.
So Judd is sitting in the bowels of XL Energy Center here.
Yeah, I apologize for the lighting. I'm not growing pot because I'm not in my basement. I'm in the X where I can't grow pot. I'm getting accused of starting a greenhouse to grow pot in.
Okay, yeah, that was super random. I'm glad you clarified that.
No, I've got a bunch of.
I could help clarify on that, but I'm just going to actually plead the fifth on. I don't know how that would translate with pot growing with those fluorescent lights.
Pretty
above,
soon,
but
I
I'm
don't.
just gonna
Pretty
stay
soon, I don't
quiet.
think you're. Based on some of the recent news, I think you'll be fine here at
Also
some point
true.
in the state of
Yeah,
Minnesota.
Dex, don't. I mean, it's fine. I just got accused of it in the comments, so I wanted to clear this up.
So Judd's hanging out at the X, and later on tonight, once we're done with this Vikings Night 2 live stream on the Purple Daily YouTube channel, the Score North YouTube channel will be a Judd's hockey show, either funeral for the Wild if this score holds 1-0 in the first period, or preparing for a Game 7. So we just said goodbye to Tyler Fornes. Let's say hello to our friend Thor Nystrom.
What's
from
up, boys?
Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros.
He's a lion. He's a lion.
Yeah.
Hendon Hooker is a lion.
Yeah. As long as they jumped on that grenade for the Vikings, and I don't have to be concerned about the Vikings coming away from this weekend with Hendon Hooker anymore. So that pick made me very happy.
Yeah, you and Tyler are both doing a similar jig when it came to that Hendon Hooker pick. So, hey, dude, thanks for coming out last night. That was just one of the most amazingly fun nights. We all kind of talked after the show that, wow, people just showed out, man, at Park Tavern. Hundreds of people, and the Vikings, by the way, are on the clock in. They're in the on deck circle. So we'll get to it here in a second. But thank you for coming out last night, Thor. I think you were a man of the people, and people appreciated your insight last night.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. Yeah, that was incredible. Like I was telling you after the show, but like I showed up in the Uber and the driver's like, what is going on here? You know, like there was people that were like literally spilling out of the building. There were so many people there. And I had to wave you guys down to part the Red Sea so I could even get up there. That was incredible. Last night was really fun.
So let's get right down to it here. The Vikings are in the on deck circle right now with the 87th pick. And I'm putting you on the spot. I don't know how closely you've been tracking here, but
I've been tracking.
Okay.
Put me on the spot.
Give us a few players. Who should they be looking at right now?
For me, it would be Adebaware from Northwestern is the kid that I would take here if he gets Downey. I'm surprised he's still on the board, but he's super raw. But the physical package is, you don't see many guys coming to the NFL like that. Like not too far off from Trayvon Walker, just like 1-to-1, putting those two guys together. Freaky athlete. It was 97 percentile size adjusted athleticism. Little bit on the smaller side at 282, shade under 6'2", but ridiculous length and almost 82-inch wingspan, 95th percentile plus in terms of that. You can play him inside, you can play him outside. That would be a kid that I would look at here potentially.
A few other names that Tyler threw out here, just in terms of, there's a lot of cornerbacks available. Clark Phillips still out there. Keely Ringo was projected to be a first rounder on a lot of different mocks, and he's slipping deep into the third round now. Yeah, you weren't exactly as high on him. And Tyler talked about his lack of oily hips, which could be a problem when
You can't
defending
flip them,
in
man.
the
You gotta be able
NFL.
to flip those hips.
Yeah, he has rusty hips. The
Rusty
opposite.
hips.
Yeah, creaky hips.
We'll add that to the football.
He's
Geriatric
67 years
hips.
old. Yeah, he's 65. It's Walker, that damn thing that he has to use while trying to turn around to cover a receiver that's the problem.
It's funny. I thought I was like crazy low on him, like certainly lower than like other people in the media. I had him as cornerback 13 on my board. I had him 77th overall, but the NFL certainly agrees, but maybe even like apparently more so because we're already past the 77th pick. So, but not terribly surprised that he fell.
The Ravens pick is in at 86. We're just waiting to see who it is. And the Vikings are officially on the clock right now.
Ooh.
Trenton Simpson to the Ravens. Trenton Simpson to the Ravens.
We don't need Trenton Simpson. That's okay. He's
okay
a freak
you
athlete.
okay with him going?
I'm okay with him going. He's a freak athlete, but like the light needs to turn on for that kid, or else he's just this, like a collection of disparate parts that don't go together. They say he's versatile, but he wasn't great at any aspect in college. They could play him all over the place just because he had the freaky physical package or whatever, but light is not turned on yet. I'm okay with the Vikings not getting him.
Is there any reason to trade back here and accumulate an extra middle round pick if you're the Vikings?
1,000%. I know it's not going to be the sexiest with the fans, especially because the Vikings didn't have the round 2 pick, but a lot of quality players still on the board, and the Vikings lack pick equity tomorrow. Right, like you only have 3 other picks outside of this pick if you end up staying in the slot. So I would be totally down with that.
Yeah, it would seem to, because they didn't do it in the first round. Yes, Dex.
Niners trading up for Tom Pelissero.
Oh, so
okay, there you go.
Trading down. That's interesting.
Pelissero has the Niners trading in here. So the Niners have a boatload of 3rd round picks.
They do,
because they have the comp pick. So the Niners have the 99, the 101, and the 102.
We got to get the details.
Is this the deal? Is this the deal? The Vikings and the Niners?
Is this the start of the Niners solving their quarterback conundrum?
No.
Kyle Shanahan getting his son?
Oh, yeah, that would be
interesting.
Fun.
Wow.
Imagine.
If you what would this show have done if you were to have said a few days ago, hey, I'm not going to give you any more details, but the Vikings and the Niners consummated a trade involving Niners 3rd round picks. What would have happened on this show?
The folks out there would that would have started the reckless speculation for sure.
So we don't have any other details other than the Niners are on the clock now and the Vikings have traded back here. And again, the Niners have the 99, the 101, and the 102. Okay. The Vikings had the 87. And so we'll get you more details. Oh, here it is. Here we go. Here's the trade.
Yep.
Oh my God. I'm just kidding.
What is it?
All right. It's the 80. So San Francisco gets the 87. The Vikings get the 102, the 164, and the 222.
Oh, okay.
Can you do some draft value chart math for us?
I will.
102. Say that again.
So the Vikings move back 15 spots. They move from 87 back to 102. So they flip those picks. Okay. And the Vikings pick up 2 extra picks, the 164, which isn't going to be until tomorrow, obviously.
Yep.
And the 222. The 102 will happen tonight. That's at the end of the 3rd round.
All right.
So they still have a pick tonight. We just have to wait probably like another hour instead, which is kind of par for the course.
I will get you the tabulations here in 1 second.
Okay. So they must have thought, kind of like we're saying here, hey, there's a handful of cornerbacks here. There's some defensive linemen. But, I kind of feel like, too, when we were doing our mock draft simulations with you on our reckless draft speculation episodes, Thor, I feel like every time we got to this range, like the 87 and then the 119, it always felt like it was a middle ground for the positions the Vikings were looking for. That there oftentimes weren't cornerbacks that you loved, but there also weren't interior defensive linemen, and so it kind of made sense. And we didn't really go through the exercise of trading back once we got into the mock simulation, but this has kind of played out seemingly like the simulations we did every Tuesday for the last several weeks.
Yeah, sure. It's funny how that works out, but yeah, I agree with that. Running that trade, the Vikings actually gave up. Well, it's interesting because they gave up in terms of the trade chart more points than they got back, but they flesh out the pick, the collection they have now to where they have a full 7 pick allocation, and you stay in the round. So I can't quibble with it too much, but the trade chart says the Vikings shipped out 155 points, with that 87th pick, and they got back 123.7.
Fire Kwesi. Fire Kwesi.
Yeah,
I'm
stock
out.
market move. That's what this is, pure and simple, just a big gamble.
Yeah, I mean, like, but I'm okay with it because you needed to flesh out the picks. Like, we had talked about this, and you still stay in the round. And there's multiple different guys that you can consider here. We talked about all these guys falling down the board. I'm okay with that decision.
This lends credence, though, to what we talked about before you came on when the show opened, which is this. If you go back and watch the video from last night that the Vikings put out, it's about a minute 10 of the Addison pick. And it was very clear because of how the clock was winding down that the Vikings were getting calls on that pick. And a year ago, obviously, Kwesi bailed from 12 to 32. And when Kwesi calls Addison to congratulate him, he says, we took the shot clock down to the end. And O'Connell standing right there by him and says, yeah, we sure did. And you could tell O'Connell, because there's also a clip where Kwesi says, we stuck to the plan, which I think was this time around, we're going to take our guy, Addison in this case, at 23. He didn't trade back. My inclination is it's in Kwesi's DNA to trade back. So I wonder if this is also an agreement of, okay, last night we addressed it, but we need to get more picks. And this gives you more picks. Yes, the draft trade chart's not perfect, but it also gives you, with the draft being fairly flat at this point, more opportunities. Because I think Kwesi prefers that. I think O'Connell's probably a little bit more impatient and just prefers to take guys that they have slotted at the picks when their picks come up.
That's very well said. And I agree with that for sure.
Professional.
And
Nice job,
I'm
Judd.
professional. Thank you very much. I know it's dark in here.
What a
but
great
I'm leaving
point.
right now.
Great
Thanks,
point.
everybody.
But I want to offer one contextual thing about trade charts in a vacuum, like just for people out there, is these things remain static every single year when the context of the class that they're judging do not, right? And so there's some classes where you have a really good first round. Maybe the day 2 is not very good, like up to par with regular years, or maybe it's strong at the top but like the depth falls off the shelf, whatnot. You almost have to modify that thing for the class, but it remains static. So like, like for instance, last year's with 12, like people didn't love the middle of that first round. The second round was viewed as maybe a little bit more quality, than the year before, a couple years before. So like that, it made a little bit of sense why you take a little bit of a bath on that. Then you add in the context of the Vikings wanting to get up to the 7 picks, all the roster holes they have, the very little cap room that they have to address those. That's where I think this starts to make a little bit more sense. I'm not going to nitpick that one because you stay in the round and you pick up two extra picks, and who knows, you might even get the same kid that you would have taken at the slot before.
It is another interesting note here, and Kevin Seifert from ESPN and Judd's former colleague at the Star Tribune points this out, that unless they trade back up and make another move here, they will wind up with only 1 pick in the top 100 picks in this year's draft, the Jordan Addison pick. And that's what you get when you trade a second-round pick for TJ Hawkinson, and I think we would all agree that that's a trade that we would all sign up for. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, kind of puts pressure on you to nail the Jordan Addison pick and to be right about it, and we'll see how that pans out.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah, you can't miss on that pick, and they need to be like, you're not going to hit every single one of your picks. Obviously, after 100, the odds go down, but they need to find a couple long-term contributors here. Pull a couple diamonds out of the rough. And I think with the players on the board, you can find that, and you can find that at positions in need. We talked about how cornerback is the deepest, class, the positional group is the deepest in this draft. That's, I think, maybe what they're going to be targeting coming up here, or the interior defensive line. But getting all those extra picks is going to help you to plug those holes.
Yeah.
So Thor, what's your philosophy draft wise? Because to go back to the Childress days, there were years where they picked 5 times. And made some trades, and then by the end of Rick's tenure, they were trying to pick 15 times. As a draft expert, what's the sweet spot? Is there one? Because I feel like fans right now, or a certain faction of them, are upset. You didn't trade away your picks, you're not getting more picks. But then again, I feel like there was a different faction of fans who, when Rick would take 27 players, would be like, what the hell? So, what's the sweet spot of a draft as far as being smart and getting enough players but not feeling like you're smarter because you took 16 chances.
Yeah, this is like it's not like the cleanest answer, but it depends on the circumstance of that class, right? Like, and if you can get the value, and there's not like the one guy that you think is like way above everybody else on your board, going to be a perfect fit on your roster. If you get like if some team's going to overpay you, and then move down in sort of that regard, that's how I would do it. Or if I could get a discount on a trade up, if a kid is there that I love, that doing it that way, whatever. But like, it depends every single year, the different class and then the circumstance that you're in. But I would never take baths on draft equity trades would be my only philosophy that I would stick with, every single year.
Yeah. A quick reset here. So, man, you guys are awesome to see this, man. 4,500 people hanging out with us right now on a Friday night 2 of the NFL Draft. The Vikings haven't even done anything yet tonight besides just trade back to the last pick in the 3rd round. So we appreciate you all spending a chunk of your Friday night with us here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. Phil Mackey, Judd Zolgad, our executive producer, Declan Goff, and our friend Thor Nystrom, our draft-loving friend from Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. You can follow him on Twitter at ThorKU, and you can find him weekly as part of the Purple Daily family, a new podcast we just launched last week with Tyler Fornes and Declan called Purple Daily on Draft. So they'll be recapping the draft next week and then taking sort of a young player and draft angle at Vikings discussions going forward. So we're super pumped about that. And the Cowboys are on the clock right now with the 90th pick, so the Vikings are 12 picks away here. We would love to get your thoughts on the quarterback discussion. We had a great talk earlier, like an hour ago, with Tyler, and then Hendon Hooker came off the board in the middle of that discussion. But so I guess first question is, to what extent would you still be looking at a quarterback if you're the Vikings in this draft? And then second question, which quarterbacks do you like best? A Jaron Hall, a Jake Haener, a Tanner McKee, Dorian Thompson-Robinson? I mean, there's some interesting skill sets out there, but obviously all of these are sort of blindfolded dart throws once you get past the top quarterback. So where are you at when it comes to Vikings and quarterbacks here the rest of the weekend?
For me, it's a back burner position because you have to address a couple of those other ones. Like, you have to address cornerback first. You have to address interior defensive line first, maybe even running back if that Dalvin Cook transaction we've been talking about, Paul Strum first, is going to go down. So, like, those will be one, you have to address those first. But now that you have these extra picks, this is the beauty of it. It gives you more possibilities, right? Like, and I think this trade, it opens up the possibility that they take a developmental quarterback. They just didn't have the picks before. Right? Like, they just didn't. So now that you have your full allotment back, I think this is how you could potentially see it later on. Again, like, I'm going to address those other couple with my next few picks, those other needs. But like later on, Jake Haener, Tanner McKee would be at the top of that list for me. And then the next grouping I would have is Aiden O'Connell and Dorian Thompson-Robinson in a bucket. The other kids, I don't know that I'd waste a pick on him in the Viking situation. Clayton Tune, I maybe 7th round. I'd be okay with that for the Vikings. Stetson Bennett he's the next guy on my list.
Stop.
Yeah.
He's 74 years old, Thor.
Yeah, I mean, it just drops off a shelf after that. Jaron Hall is not good. Max Dugan is even worse. And then you're into the guys that didn't get invited to the combine. Sorry, Tanner Morgan.
So Thor, what is your, as we get towards the Vikings pick now at the end of the 3rd round, what's your biggest surprise about this draft that you like, and what's your biggest surprise that you don't like? Because it does seem like, and I know the mocks are crapshoot, but it feels like there are a few things that have taken wider turns than they often do as far as the unexpected, which is chaos, which we all here love. But I think for the mocking community, it probably drives their ADD nuts.
For sure. The worst thing was definitely Detroit's 1st round. And one of the better things was Detroit's 2nd round. I don't know what's going on there. Like, they had that YOLO 1st round where they were doing all these wonky things. But then today they had awesome picks. Like, I love Sam Laporta, is really, really good player, was really underrated. And then getting Brian Branch where they got him was wild. Like, in the 2nd, like, if you just flipped, if they had just taken Brian Branch in the Jahmyr Gibbs slot and then taken Jahmyr Gibbs in the Brian Branch slot, no one would have quibbled with that. It's just because it was reversed or whatever. But yeah, they're weird. The Packers, they were the opposite. I like their 1st round. I like Lucas Van Ness. I was smiling so much at their picks today. I didn't know what in the F they were doing, to be honest. Like Luke Musgrave at 42, a kid who started 13 games in college, caught 40 balls in college. Like he had a season-ending injury this past year, but the kid doesn't break tackles. He doesn't create separation. He is like in terms of like the frame and then the north-south explosion. Like that's what he's got, and he can win downfield. Like you've seen it in brief flashes, but again, he hasn't been on the field very much. He doesn't win in the intermediate area, and he doesn't break any tackles. So you're hanging a lot of your hat on like ideas, making logical leaps with Luke Musgrave. I wouldn't have done that. Like he has a bust profile for me there. He doesn't stay healthy either. Is the other thing. His uncle was an NFL quarterback. That's I think the reason why some of these.
Bill Musgrave.
Bill Musgrave.
And a former tiny play chart holding offensive coordinator for the Vikings. Yeah.
Exactly. And then they went even more off the grid, the Packers did with their next pick. They finally take a wide, I suppose they did it with Watson last year, but they hate taking the wide receivers early. This time, like I actually like the Christian Watson pick. The Jaden Reed pick was one of the more baffling decisions so far in the draft. Like there were so many receivers that I would have taken over that kid. He doesn't have any trump card trait, right? Like he's a smaller outside boundary receiver who is not an elite athlete, and he's not polished either. Like I like the way that he attacks the ball, and so like he's a competitive kid, whatnot. But like I don't know, like for me, that's a middle round guy, and they took him at 50. Yeah. So you love it. You love to see it when the division rivals just start doing dumb things.
I feel like every other pick in the third round has been a trade now. Now the Chiefs have traded up, and they're on the clock at 92. I'll give you guys the last few picks, and some of these names are because this is right around that 87 range where we were kicking some of these names around in our Vikings mock draft simulations. So some of these names are going to be really familiar in our discussions. Tank Bigsby, the running back from Auburn, went to the Jaguars at 88. Kobe Turner, the interior defensive lineman from Wake Forest, goes to the Rams at 89. DeMarvion Overshone, the linebacker from Texas, goes to the Cowboys at 90, and then the linebacker, yeah. And then the Tulane linebacker, Dorian Williams, goes to the Bills at 91. So little linebacker run there right before the Vikings.
Dang it. You guys know I like Dorian Williams. We came out of him in our mock drafts, like I feel like in half of them.
Yep.
But like he would always fall beneath where he should go. Like this is around where he should go. That's a really good pick for them.
Yeah, I mean, I still think the Vikings need a linebacker, but it just seems like now that some of these guys are off the board, I don't even know. You can tell us, but is there anyone? Should you be looking linebacker at all in 10 picks from now?
I don't love the linebackers that are so like. I mean, maybe you shop local. Nick Herbig would be the one guy that I potentially look at, the Wisconsin kid. But like, he's sort of, is he an edge? Is he an off-ball linebacker? It's like one of those with him. But like, just overall with the athletic package and then what he did on the field, like, but you're just wondering, like, can you just play him at off ball or is he gonna, is he sort of caught between the two? But I like him enough. After that, like, I start to lose a little bit of interest until we get a little bit later on.
Yeah. How you doing
Are
there,
there
Judd?
any corners left? Are there any cornerbacks?
Oh,
left?
lots of corners left. You can still
Darius
Rush
Rush still sitting out there.
See, I feel like this is the one place that because you're going to add. I don't think it's as dire in the Vikings' mind as fans think, because if they know or think that Booth and Evans are going to stay healthy, that's going to be a big boost. Now the room still needs more depth, but I also think that if there's the depth that we've been talking about now for months at the cornerback position, it might make sense to take one here, because the one thing is they have to be a little bit leery with Booth's injury history in college and Evans having 3 concussions last year. Like, you can't be fully certain. You can be confident, but that can't be just a certainty.
Yeah, and last year they weren't good on the field, right? Like, I mean, there was some okay reps, but there was some real ugly reps as well. And those are your 2 projected boundary cornerbacks. That's a problem. Like if you could cut that down to they're fighting over one position, or you had a kid here with this pick coming up here,
right,
and it's 3 guys doing the battle royale for the 2, you start to get a little bit more confident, but you have to add something there.
If Booth can play, is he a potential bust in your mind, though? Because, I mean, he was a pretty highly touted prospect, and I think he only fell out of the first round mainly, if I'm correct with what I read, Thor, because of his injury problems in college. So, like, is that a kid that struggled in his first year and was hurt again, or is that a kid who you think in Washington play for the Vikings there are now more concerns about his abilities?
Well, I mean, yeah. So you had that, and then you had the raw elements to his game. So it's like those were the two reasons he fell down. The instincts is what I'm wondering about with him. The north-south explosion, cutting the routes, picking out the ball, stuff like that. You love that, and he has that inclination to flip the field. But he bit down a little bit too much for my liking in college.
Sure.
And those are the instinctual things that you have to work on. Obviously, at the NFL level, they're going to give you more eye candy and try to get you to bite down, stuff like that, and then take you over the top. He has, like, the physical skills. They speak for themselves. Like, just from the athletic standpoint, he's a first-round pick all day. But those two, can he stay healthy and can he improve those instincts? Well, we'll find out. But, yeah, like last year, we certainly didn't see that on the field yet. Will it happen now? Will the light go on this offseason? We're praying so. But, yeah, we don't know.
All right, the Chiefs traded up to 92, and they wind up with Oklahoma offensive tackle Wanya Morris.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then the Steelers drafted Georgia tight end Darnell Washington with the 93rd pick.
Yeah, the fall for Darnell Washington ends. I think a lot of people will be surprised, that he goes here, falls down, because some people have projected him erroneously. My opinion at the time, but turns out that was true. Him going in the first round, I did think he was going to go like mid-second. But the thing that I wasn't aware of in advance was some NFL teams were concerned about his medicals, and we don't get access to that. So I'm not a doctor, so even if they send me the X-rays, what would I know?
You can play one, dude. Go ahead.
Yeah, play some Doogie.
Diagnose it yourself.
Yeah, but that's with Darnell Washington, that was the thing, and he has catch point issues. Like, people who think he was going to be like some dominant matchup receiver guy didn't watch him play at Georgia because they just didn't use him that way, and they have the smartest coaching staff in college football. He only caught 2 balls, 20+ yards downfield in college. Doesn't break tackles, and with the short passes that he was getting, like, it's just a security blanket guy, because there was no plays where it's like, get Darnell Washington the ball. They wanted him more as the blocker, but like, he had the drop rate over 10%, even with that low ADOT. So I was a little bit concerned about him. Doesn't break the tackles, stuff like that. But yeah, getting him here, like, assuming that those medicals are okay, that's a solid value for sure. But I think there's reasons that that justified him falling.
All right, let's pause our draft conversation for a second here to check in with Judd Zulgad in the basement of the XL Energy Center. How are we doing here? What's our update? Looks like we're coming out of
starting the second period. Okay, is 1-0 Dallas. Rope Hintz, who has turned into Wayne Gretzky, scored again. John Klingberg, who couldn't defend me, fell down on that play. And but there are still 2 periods left, so there is hope to be found. It is only 1.
A lot of ball game left
right now. Yeah.
Judd, where are you in the building? Like,
I am in the photography room. Wow. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of good front-facing light, and I didn't bring my light. So
are there other people? Are there like photographers in there just hanging out with you, or are you alone?
They're going in and out. So because I'm actually with where this location is, not that far from the ice. So they're going into the building, into the rink to shoot, and then they come back out and stuff on their computers. And I'm sure that they love hearing my analysis, my in-depth analysis.
You should just go into the tunnel, dude. When they start the period here, you should just can you take your microphone and laptop
right down the.
The ice club, the Bud Light ice lounge.
But there's an ice lounge. I could go get absolutely just tanked and start to heckle and like pound on the glass while on the camera. My credential would be revoked, and I would be asked to leave for good.
I'll tell you something, Dean.
It would be
it'd be
viral,
worth it for the content.
It'd be viral Score North. Yes, it would go viral, and I'd be a legend.
You had a former co-host one time who I think lost his. It was for Gopher hockey, and I think he might have lost his credential for lighting up the officials in anger between periods.
He was doing Fox Sports North hockey Gophers sideline stuff.
You guys are cowards.
And it was a game against Mankato, and the Gophers got screwed because officiating in the WCHA was just awful. And yeah, he verbally assaulted the officials in the runway as they came off while working for Fox Sports North, which is a really bad way to stay employed by Fox Sports North. It's a great story, though. And again, I mean, he was a legend for it. It's a fantastic story. I just wouldn't have the guts to do something like that.
No. So the second period started, and after we're done here
Yes.
with our Purple Daily
I'm going
live stream,
upstairs.
Judd's gonna settle in, and you guys are gonna pump out a Judd's Hockey Show live on the Score North YouTube channel. So we're all over the place here. Thanks for hanging out with us. We still have several thousand people with us, even though the Vikings haven't actually done anything in the almost 4 hours since night 2 started.
Thank God we didn't start at 6.
Well, that was our thought originally. Is
We'd be on
we'll
fumes.
start at 6 o'clock and.
Yeah.
Like, what are we? First of all, we're still kind of zombies from last night. It was so amazing and overstimulating. So I think we probably made the right decision here. But just a quick update on where things are at in the third round. So the Vikings, if you're just joining here, maybe you were out and about on a Friday night, the Vikings did make a trade with the 49ers. They moved back 15 picks from the 87th pick to the last pick in the third round, which is the 102, and they pick up 2 extra picks on day 3. So they do pick up some extra capital, but now we're just waiting on the Vikings to make the last pick in the third round. The Arizona Cardinals are on the clock seemingly for the last half hour with the 94th pick, and then there are 7 more teams to go until the Vikings. Okay, real quick, because I keep looking at all these, like the consensus big boards, and it seems pretty universal that Kelee Ringo is the best or highest ranked player that's still available here. So is his lack of mobility and his lack of his rusty hips, I think, as you put it, like, is that enough of a reason to just say no out entirely, or is that a guy that you should just pounce on because of how far he's falling?
Well, I have is it either 3 or 4 cornerbacks ranked above him on my board, so I wouldn't take him here. Depending on it, like, one of these other guys, because you're gonna have your option of them.
Oh, the Lions are trading up. The Lions are trading back up.
Oh,
all right,
God.
which fullback are they going to take
Brad
here?
Holmes
Which
is the new
next
Rick
role
Spielman.
linebacker are they going to
He's
draft?
the new Rick Spielman. He can't help himself.
Yeah, such a weird drafted team. But yeah, like you mentioned Clark Phillips before. He's a slot only, but his cover skills are by far the best that are still available. The reason that he fell down, the smaller frame, and then not an elite athlete. But it would be hilarious if he was teammates with Jordan Addison in the NFL, because he gave Jordan Addison the most trouble in college.
Jordan Addison's like, oh, finally I get away from this guy. No, you actually have to face him every day in
Every
practice
day in
now.
practice. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, like, with Clark Phillips, confined to the slot for sure. So again, it's what we talked about of having to move Byron Murphy to the outside if you're comfortable doing that. That would be the equation there. That you mentioned Darius Rush, I would definitely put him above Ringo in terms of the outside boundary guy that presses you, the press man dude, following you around. Like, the athleticism plays with Darius Rush, and it's more than just the high end speed, which he definitely has. Way better movement than Kelee Ringo. He just didn't have like the same pedigree coming into the season. Ringo was already way up, like in the 2 early mock drafts, he was in the first round of everything a year ago, whereas Darius Rush was way off everybody's radar. But he had an awesome season, then he had an awesome Senior Bowl, then he had an awesome pre-draft testing process. So he would be the other guy that I would put up there. Terrell Smith too. I rank Terrell Smith from Minnesota above Kelee Ringo too.
Okay.
Weird question, perhaps, Thor, but do you think that as talented the last 2 years as that Georgia defense has been, do you think after a guy like Seen couldn't even start, that there is some feeling that it might be also based on scheme, and so that there's a backing off of the scouts from what they perceived to be talent? Because, offensively in college, that happens all the time, where guys are like, oh my God, that guy looks great. And the scouts are like, yeah, he looks great, but the scheme helps him. Is Georgia's defensive scheme so good that that's playing a role perhaps in devaluing players because scouts can see that?
It's funny because it was different for each one of them, right? Like Trayvon Walker, the first pick last year, who had very little sack production in college, he got the benefit of the doubt the other way of like, oh, in the Georgia scheme, they don't ask you to pin your ears back. You have to keep gap integrity. So they were giving them the excuse of that. But then you have the opposite end of the spectrum would be a guy like Nakobe Dean, who was awesome in college, was a tackle machine on the smaller side. But like, what people would say about him is he had all the guys up front that were occupying guys. Right. Like, and so Nakobe Dean could just zoom around and, whatever. And that's why he ended up dropping. Because it's like, what about when the talent in front of him, it's neutralized at the next level, and then more offensive linemen have access to him to pick him off? That's what he struggled with. So it's situation specific for sure. But like with Ringo, yeah, I think that there's a thought in there of that, of like, the pass rush would get there so quick. He didn't have to hang with guys on islands in space.
Right.
That's the thing that he struggles with. He has to go to a team like the Seahawks aren't going to take him because they took Devin Witherspoon before. But one of those teams where they just play zone and they have their outside corners do the silo where you're just playing it in the spot, like, up and down like that. But you don't have to trail guys side to side. That's what you should be doing, pressing the guy. And then, if it's carry him down the boundary, if he going deep or whatever, but otherwise pass him off.
Michael Wilson, your Stanford wide receiver, just went to the Arizona Cardinals.
Michael Wilson
with the 94th overall pick, and the Bengals run the clock at 95, and their pick is apparently in as well. So,
I like that Michael Wilson pick. Yeah, he's super underrated. Yeah, yeah.
By the way, Judd, the Stars have a 7-0 shots on goal advantage in the second period.
I'm watching this on my phone down here, and I'm not. What the hell is going? If this keeps up, I can't wait for our.
You might have to go to the bench and tell Dean, "Hey, let's just start packing your box now before the third period."
I should be in the locker room, which is not that far. I should be in the locker room after this period, and I'll say, Dean, no need.
Can you actually cut in? So Bally's is doing the game. Can you just cut in on Gorgie or whoever is going to do the between periods?
And I'll close that door, and I'll say, you know what, gents, the knee's a long way from the heart. You want me a hockey player? You want me to be a hockey player? I'm going to get the best damn period of hockey from this team that we've seen in forever.
They shouldn't need to get riled up by a coach or anyone, right? Just a playoff game.
Or a Score North Yahoo.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. So we're like 7 picks away from the Vikings making the last pick in the third round here. Thor, can we go back to just Jordan Addison for a second? Because we did the reaction last night just in the heat of the moment, but now that you've had a night to sleep on it and 24 hours here, what do you think about Jordan Addison and how he plays off Justin Jefferson? Jefferson can play outside, can play slot, and so, by the way, so can Jordan Addison. So Addison, the last couple of years, 2021 at Pitt combined with last year at USC, he played about 1,300 total snaps, and about half of them were in the slot. He was more on the outside with USC, more of a slot guy in the 2 years prior at Pitt. But how do you think those guys play off of each other?
Very well. Yeah, very well. Jefferson obviously is the star, and what all he needs on the other side of the field is a guy that can beat single coverage or the other team's inevitable cornerback too, because that's who's going to be on him. And we know that Jordan Addison can do that. The thing he lacks is measurables. So, he's not going to be singeing people down the field. He ain't going to remind anyone of Randy Moss. But as far as beating the guy in single coverage, that's all you're looking for. You have to disincentivize the defense from bracketing Jefferson, double teaming him. You needed that guy to do it on the other side. And, I think the contextual thing to keep in mind with that pick is, what we've been talking about with the depth of this cornerback class and how bad the wide receiver class was. Just fell off a shelf after Addison. Like, some teams have been throwing darts on some of these day 2 receivers. It's like, I didn't want to be shopping in that bin for a wide receiver if you wanted to count on him from day one. And if you don't have the wide receiver next year that can, again, consistently beat that single coverage of the opponent's CB2, you're going to see the same crap we saw for the last 16 games, the last 17 games. You count the playoff game. That's what they're going to do to Justin Jefferson until the Vikings get someone on the other side that can do that.
And there's nothing wrong with when you have a receiver as good as this. And by the way, when you have dissected and know exactly what the weakness is, and it wasn't his fault, but it was the weakness, there's nothing wrong with taking a guy who then is going to complement that. Like I think we get too hung up on, well, he's not really a receiver one, right? He's going to play. No, Justin Jefferson needs that support. And so I have no problem with the fact that you are basically taking an engine and specializing it. Like, I'm not going to complain about that.
Yeah, and so we love the comps, and you do comps. So if this player pans out to his peak potential or close, here's an NFL player that you may have heard of that'd be like Tyler Lockett, I think was the name you threw out last night.
Yep.
We've seen maybe T.Y. Hilton as a comp, and then PFF in their 600-page manifesto has Emmanuel Sanders as a comp for Jordan Addison. So, like, if you're telling me, okay, if he pans out, I get Tyler Lockett, to play next to Justin Jefferson, or I get Emmanuel Sanders to play next to Justin Jefferson, yes, sign me up. Absolutely.
Yeah, Emmanuel Sanders won downfield a bit more. Like the utility was more of that coming out of college. So that's the only part I quibble with that. Like I just think for me the special sauce with Addison is his route running ability, right? So like that's why I ended up going with Lockett or whatever. But yeah, he can win on the outside. He proved the concept of that last year at USC, and he's going to have to play there in Minnesota because you have the 2 tight ends you're playing every down.
And the downfall, you guys, of the last 2 receivers the Vikings have drafted in the first round who have failed miserably, Cordero Patterson, who, yes, turned out to be a versatile guy, but here he didn't turn out to be nearly what they expected at receiver. And then Laquan Treadwell is what? They both couldn't run around to save their lives.
Yeah, and actually, you know what? Someone emailed us, and we answered in our own way, but would love to get your answer on this too. We had an emailer of Purple Daily send in on Feedback Friday last week. When you guys say so-and-so can't run a route, it's like, what does that mean? I mean, they run routes. They're wide receivers. What do you mean they can't run a route? And the way I explained it was, it's so much more complicated than, okay, this is a 15-yard out, right? It's oftentimes in the NFL too, there are choice routes. There's decisions you have to make based on the leverage you're seeing from a cornerback or a safety, right? So when you hear a guy can't run a route, what does that mean to you, Thor?
It's some of that stuff for sure, but even just like before you get to that, just the straightforward part of it, all the different aspects of it. You have to get off the line. Number one, you have to have the play strength or the footwork or both to get off the line. Number one, and then get into your route in such a way where it's not the DB who's informing which direction you're going to go off the line. You start with that, and then keeping them off your scent is the other thing that I look for. Whether that's adjusting tempo, whether that, altering the tempo, whether that's adjusting your footwork and different stuff like that. You just don't want the DB to know when you're going to break that thing off and what direction you're going to go. If they're constantly confused about that, like I don't know what's going to go on, whatever, how can they jump the route? Even if they have an athleticism advantage on you, it's not just athlete on athlete. If it was all the track stars, they would be the wide receivers and the cornerbacks in the NFL. It has a lot more to do with that. And this is the part of the game where Jordan Addison wins. You don't know when he's going to break off the route. You don't know on the field. He keeps you off that. Like he hides his tracks with that up to the point where it happens. And then he cuts the smooth angle when he does. Like he snaps it off or he'll come back or whatever, where the DB is not able to crowd him right there. And so he opens up separation in that way. And then he can accelerate off of that. That's where the athleticism starts to come back in. And then you create more of the separation, stuff like that. But keeping people off the route, being able to get into your route, different stuff like that.
He compared himself in his press conference today to an artist painting a blank canvas when he's running routes.
I love that.
He loves the art of running routes.
I love that. Yeah, film guy.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of I'm not going to pretend to know a ton about his personality, but there's an edge there, man. Like didn't he also, someone said when he got up to the podium, or maybe when they were taking the picture, he said something like time to get paid or something. So
he told Kwesi that.
He told Kwesi that.
Yep.
Yeah,
he's to get paid.
He's very confident. Justin Jefferson was very confident too. Guy who was picked around that range. Yeah, and like just speaking to one more specific thing about Addison's route running, there wasn't a player in this class that was as clever at setting defenders up. Like in addition to keeping them off the scent and different stuff like that, he does other really, really like NFL veteran advanced things along the route tree. Like the one thing that jumped up, like just a subtle thing that you appreciate when you're watching like the cutups. This one game I was watching, like he wins on this route going inside, like on this one specific part of the field against this one specific defensive back. It was like the next quarter, the same spot in the field against the same guy, same level of the field. He starts that route break and he sold the entire thing like it was going to be the exact same. And then his first steps into that thing, he's sort of deacon like he's going to go inside and then just cuts the clean corner the other way. He made that DB fly. He was going the other direction and he couldn't slam on the brakes in time. Now Jordan Addison just in the open field. Like you don't need to be Randy Moss as an athlete to do that. Right? Like you have to be an NFL caliber athlete,
yes,
of course, and he certainly is.
But it's less about his 40 time is what you're saying. So he didn't run a 4.340. This is the stuff that makes up for that. What really matters on the football field is what you're saying.
Yeah, because it's not a track meet, right? Like the thing you're trying to do is give your quarterback throwing windows and then converting the opportunities that you get. He does that. He doesn't do the thing of, just burning down the field and then going up and getting it like Randy Moss. That's not his game. But like the stuff in the intermediate area, in any sector of it, right? Like coming across the field, going to the sideline, like however that works. Of course, the short stuff, that was one of the things that my buddy Renner was nitpicking him about in his profile, because he's really good after the catch as well. He's one of those guys with the ball in his hands who seems to have like the eyes in the ear holes, has a really good idea of the bodies around him, and he'll set defenders up with that too. Where like he'll get two guys running into each other, changing his path and different stuff like that. Very, very clever player.
What's the concern about him potentially in this league in press coverage?
Yeah, he lacks play strength, right? That's the other thing outside of the high octane athleticism. He's a little bit on the skinnier side. With Devonta Smith, the kid from Alabama that went to the Eagles, a recent example of a skinnier guy there. We got to see him on the boundary more, like over the course of his career, and face some press coverage a bit there. But this was also the knock on him because, against Alabama, with how many good receivers they had across the formation and how dangerous that was, a lot of teams will play off coverage on that and give the guys the free release, right? To try to guard against, on the back end or whatever. Jordan Addison just didn't face that certainly earlier in his career when he was in the slot. Last year, he saw a little bit more. He's clever enough and the footwork is good enough that I think that will translate to the next level. I would be surprised if he's just getting stopped at the line or just, at will getting redirected. There's lots of little receivers in the NFL that can get off the line against press coverage, on the boundary as well. It's just, that's the thing we have to see when he goes up against those bigger, longer, more athletic cornerbacks in the NFL.
All right, the third round's getting weird here. I'm going to give you the last 5 picks.
Yeah.
There are 3 picks left in the third round. The Vikings have the last one. So we're just about to the Vikings pick here, unless they trade it again. So the last 5 picks, you got Jordan Battle from Alabama goes to the Bengals. Broderick Martin, the defensive tackle from Western Kentucky, goes to the Lions. Ricky Stromberg, center from Arkansas, to the Commanders. Siaki Ika, the defensive tackle from Baylor, to the Browns. And we have our first kicker off the board in the third round.
Jake Moody?
The 49ers took Jake Moody from Michigan with one of their multiple third-round picks.
Yeah, that's interesting. Even those close to Jake Moody thought he was going to go in the 4th, but they're reaching up a little bit because they know, that there was teams interested in the 4th. So not like an egregious reach.
The Niners have so many picks, though, that they're probably sitting there, if we're going to take him in the 5th round, what's the difference? Let's get him. Let's make sure that if we like him, let's get him. But a 3rd-round pick for a kicker, my goodness.
They also should have given us this pick in that trade. Like, what, you were haggling with us because you're going to take a friggin' kicker? Like, why didn't you just take that 102? Give us the 99.
The Vikings caved. They just absolutely caved.
Where's what?
Their kicker from the former Bear. Robbie Gould, who kicked for him like the last 4 or 5 years. I like that guy, man. Veteran, good leg, indoors. I'd be very tempted to get rid of
he'll be available.
No.
He'll be available, right?
But I just wouldn't be adverse to jettisoning Declan's
Not a
guy.
kicking problem. Not a kicking problem.
Exactly right.
So
Robbie Gould.
One of the things that was sort of concerning about this thing that happened here over the last 5 picks, we started to have a run on nose tackles, right? Like there's 3 nose tackles that you like that you could potentially play right away, with Tonga maybe in a rotation. Broderick Martin's a guy that we talked about in this process. You could get him way later in that PFF mock. He was always the guy that we would do if we didn't get Ika or we didn't get Jared Clark. Yeah. And then Ika, he falls down a bit. Not necessarily surprising because his last season wasn't as good and the wingspan isn't there. So he has a harder time shedding and then penetrating in the backfield. You wonder, with having even less reach, against in comparison to the NFL offensive lineman, how that's going to go. He can certainly occupy. But now, just like 6 picks ago, you had all 3 of those guys on the board. Now you only have Jared Clark left on the board that's in that phylum. So that'll be interesting too, because that's another position the Vikings obviously need.
So the Raiders pick is in at 100. We don't know who it is yet. The Niners are on the clock with the 101, and the Vikings are in the on-deck circle with the last pick in the 3rd round, the last pick of the night. So, Thor, let's just get your quick thoughts again. You've been tossing out names here. There's still a handful of cornerbacks that it feels like we haven't really had that next run of cornerbacks yet. In fact, you got to go back to the 83rd pick with Riley Moss. It's been 20 picks since a cornerback came off the board.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
before that, it's another 15 picks with Garrett Williams. So there's just, there's a run of, there's like a third run of cornerbacks here if the Vikings want to dive into that position.
I have round 2 grades on both Clark Phillips and Darius Rush. And then, we talked about the other guys higher in the 3rd round grades. Terrell Smith, I had a high 3rd round grade on him. And then, Ringo, I had middle of the 3rd round. And I'd be okay if they take Ringo here. That would be a good value pick either way. It's just that there's some guys that I see, a little bit higher. Adebaware would for sure be the guy that I take here, but I wouldn't quibble with any of those cornerbacks. A couple other guys, we've talked about the edge rusher thing. Like, is that a need? Is that not a need? We're sort of in the middle on that. But I really like Isaiah McGuire from Missouri. I had a 2nd rounder on him too. He's a power edge, like on the outside that sets the edge for you, and 95th percentile athleticism. So that would be one other guy that I would look at. But sort of concerning about that run on the nose tackles, and there only being one of those guys left that you could potentially day one go in and play with Tonga.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of part of me feels like, and I know that they put themselves in this position by not having a 2nd round pick, but they basically didn't make a pick in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. Like they traded back to the end of the comp section of the 3rd round, so they wind up with Jordan Addison and then nobody else until the 101, and then a lot of the day 3 picks, which are just complete crapshoots.
I will say this though, if I had told you going into last year that T.J. Hawkinson was going to be your 2nd round pick in 2023, you'd be pretty happy about it.
Easy.
So like I don't really have a problem with this. I have a bigger problem with getting too cute. And trading back in the 3rd round is cute, but it's not too cute. Trading from 12 to 32 and then trading a pick that you got with the Packers to move back again, I think is too cute because you are passing up talent there. I think that this is much sounder with Hawkinson being your 2nd round pick. Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
We got it.
Okay.
We got it. Per Albert Wilson, the Vikings are taking USC corner. Is it Mekhi Blackmon?
Oh, interesting. Okay, reuniting him with Jordan Addison. They can pack up their dorms together. They can drive up north together. So Blackmon, so some people are going to see that as a reach. Me, not quite as much. I had him 113 on my board. There's a couple of those corners that I had a little bit higher on him, but I know why Flores is going to like him. That kid is really, really feisty. Really, like he gets after you on the field. He's like a little gnat. It's funny, the concerns that you have with him, it's sort of similar with Addison. It's just flipped to the other side. Mekhi Blackmon, he over the pre-draft process, 5'10" flat, 178 pounds. The athleticism, okay, but not elite, is 74 percentile. But I really like the way that kid plays the position. And he's cool being left out there on the islands as well. And by the way, last year, that kid was fabulous. Like, there's very few cornerbacks in this class that had like a 90-plus PFF grade in any of their years in college. Mekhi Blackmon did last year. And the concerns that the NFL had with him, like I said, it's just the other thing with Addison. It's just on the other side. It's like a mirror. He's smaller. The athleticism isn't elite, but he has proven that he can win in space, in isolation, at the highest level of college football. I'm down with that pick.
Too small here?
What's up?
Too small in this league? That's always my concern with corners, because you got to be really, really good if you're not 6 feet.
So he's 5'11", 178 is what he
probably means he's 5'10".
Clocks in at.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, Emmanuel Forbes, who went at number 16, makes Mekhi Blackmon look like he got to go to Livia.
Well, that's a great place to go to lose weight. LIVEA.com if you want to find out more. Thank you, Thor.
I'm going to read you the PFF manifesto, pros and cons with Mekhi Blackmon, and then I'll give
read
you
his stats too, his coverage stats if they got him in there from last year, because he was real good last year.
So he was. I'll give you some of the advanced data here. All right, we're going to break it down. Vikings new cornerback Mekhi Blackmon, who, by the way, his comp in the NFL is AJ Parker. I don't know if that means anything to anyone.
Okay.
So he finished 9th in college football with 16 forced incompletions. He was 25th with a 25% forced incompletion rate. So there you go. Yeah.
Football.
Let's see here. He had only 2 missed tackles all season. 70 tackles, only 2 missed tackles. His missed tackle rate was 2.8%, which is pretty darn good.
That's Brian Branster. Like, that's fabulous. Yeah.
And opposing quarterbacks completed just 47.6% of passes when throwing at Mekhi Blackmon. Also, only 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions when targeting Mekhi Blackmon. So some really good, interesting numbers.
He was awesome last year.
And some of the pros on him, I'm going to give you these from PFF, Thor. You tell us if they're right, wrong, or otherwise. He's a feisty corner who wants to mix it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
He does. Yeah. He doesn't know how small he is. He doesn't.
He eliminates space between him and receivers well, gets right up on their hip to establish leverage.
Football.
Yeah.
Okay. 5 seasons of playing time with 2,260 snaps to his name. So tons of experience in big-time college football, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right, here's some of the bad stuff, some of the cons.
It's all size and athleticism stuff, I bet.
Slim frame after 5 years in college. That probably ain't changing.
For sure.
Right? He's not 19 years old anymore, so all right.
None of us are, Phil.
He has to grab to stick with route breaks. 7 penalties. So he's a little handsy.
Not good in this league. Got to coach that out of him, Brian Flores.
Got to coach him out.
No juice to get back to the catch point once he's given up ground. Not enough burst.
Yeah.
Football.
But he's not a terrible athlete, but I can see that.
You know what, though? I mean, the Vikings historically have done a great job finding great cornerbacks in the 3rd round. Guys like Marcus McCauley, Asher Allen, Josh Robinson. So
I hate when they grab. You can't grab. In this league, you're dead if you grab now. Thor knows that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So, we're reaching.
Yeah, he's a fighter, right? Like, it's the Anchorman fight scene out in the alley every time he's getting a guy off the line. Like,
Hankey's flying all over the field because he's a fighter.
No, for sure. But Flores loves that stuff. I bet Flores had been talking to Kwesi the last couple of weeks, like, take Blackmon, take Blackmon, take Blackmon. He wants those guys to fight you off the line. That's Brian Flores football.
Well, I like it.
You're going to love that kid.
Within 5 yards, I like it.
Here's another interesting thing. So last year at USC, he played, let's see here, so 805 snaps out wide, only 3 snaps in the slot. Yet, based on his size, Pro Football Focus says, what is his role in the NFL? Slot corner. There's no ideal position for Blackmon given his limitations, but the slot looks like his best chance to see the field. His willingness as a tackler and his high football IQ can play in the slot.
I think
versatility, maybe.
I think our boy Renner might be underselling him a little bit, because like the reason that I think he overcomes his size on the outside, it's that ability off the line, and he sticks with you in coverage. After that, you can't put him into the situations where the guy can just manhandle him. Like if you have the 6'3", 6'4" muscular guy who can get downfield, that's not the best matchup for him. But like with the other guys, for sure, like he's going to be a problem for the smaller receivers. He's going to stay with the shifty guys for sure, but also off the line again. Every single time you got to work for it against that kid. And talking about Jordan Addison, going back to him, he had to fight Mekhi Blackmon off the line every day in practice. So talking about his ability to get off against press coverage.
So how do we feel now, gentlemen? How do we feel about the cornerback room? So you've got it's a bunch of young dudes. Even the veteran free agent and Byron Murphy that you signed is 25 years old. So he does have a handful of years of NFL experience, but he's only 25 years old. He's kind of the wise old sage in the room. And then you have Andrew Booth Jr., 2nd-round pick last year, Caleb Evans, injury issues for both those guys, and now Mekhi Blackmon as a 3rd-round pick coming in. And then remind me the former 2nd-round pick from the Patriots, you signed him for depth.
Oh, Juwan Williams?
Yeah, so that's kind of a buy low stock by Kwesi right there.
Yeah.
So how do we feel about that cornerback room?
Way, way better than we did, 25 minutes ago or so?
Okay.
Because now with, obviously, one of the 3 spots taken by Murphy, and now you have the 3 guys to do the battle royale for the other 2 spots. And, I don't think Juwan Williams is going to be a starter or whatever. Like, who knows? Maybe they, after they were able to open up cap space after June 1st, maybe they can do something, try to bring in another guy. That's where you feel way more confident. But, like, the battle royale for the 3 guys, better than just saying Evans and Booth, you're our starters next year. We don't have any contingency plan behind you.
Back to Phil's point, was Blackmon, did he play inside in the nickel in college, or is that just a projection of where he could play?
So
in
last
National
year
Football
he
League?
played 3 snaps in the slot last year. That's
Okay,
it.
because I got to think that there's a very good chance Murphy's going to start outside, but when they're in nickel, he goes inside, and that is a tough position. I'm not asking a guy. We've seen this before. I'm not asking a guy who has not played there full time to move there. You can't just teach that. It's a different position. It's essentially a hybrid of cornerback and linebacker. I don't know how thank you very much. I don't know how I feel about the cornerback room, but what I will say is this. Going into the draft, short of a quarterback, which, would have been exciting and sexy as far as pick goes, I said this, and I'll stand by it. I wanted wide receiver. So I was willing to sacrifice potentially a cornerback because I started out, and I think most of us did, saying that this team needs to draft a cornerback at 23. I eventually pivoted off of that, and I feel better about a team that, by the way, I don't think is a finished product. So it's not like that. It's not like you're this team that's far down the road and you just need one more player, right? So I guess I don't feel great about the cornerback room, but all of that being said, I feel really good about what you did for your offense, which I do think with your head coach and what you have from a personnel standpoint needs to be the priority. That's
1,000%. Yeah, 1,000%. I was just thinking, I bet at the pick that they were at when they traded down with San Francisco, they were going to take Mekhi Blackmon there. Like, he's a conviction player for sure. And the fit with Flores is so good. I think they just got the player that they would have taken above there. They might say that in the media, but I actually think that that's true. It's like, he's the highest dude on our board. We want this kid, but like probably in between, no one going to take him. So that helps explain that trade a little bit more as well. And, good for them for doing it.
So I'm keeping tabs on just the young players who have come in, potential starters or key backups versus the players the Vikings have lost here. So even going back like 2 months in the offseason. So the Vikings have said goodbye now to Eric Kendricks in his 30s, Adam Thielen in his 30s, Cam Dantzler, young but just didn't work out, Patrick Peterson in his 30s, Dalvin Tomlinson 29, Duke Shelley, they just didn't buy into him. So they're saying goodbye to all of those starters, many of them past the age of 30. As I fumble my microphone here, broadcast professional.
Yeah. Wild, just like me.
And they bring in blocking tight end Josh Oliver, 25 years old. Edge rusher Marcus Davenport, 26 years old, I believe. Cornerback Byron Murphy, 25 years old. Dean Lowry as like a depth defensive lineman who I believe is 27 years old. And then in the draft, the first 2 picks, Jordan Addison and Mekhi Blackmon. So it's a big time shift in the age of some of these players on the roster. Obviously, we don't know maybe Mekhi Blackmon has a great offseason and camps and whatnot. I mean, there are starting jobs up for grabs. There's 3 starting cornerback jobs if you count, nickel. And I would say 2 of them are 100% up for grabs. And so there's a chance he could actually be a starter if he impresses and he's healthy and whatnot. But so what do you guys make of the makeover to this point? There's still some draft picks left, and maybe there's a couple signings here and there, but like the bulk of the Vikings remake with their first 2 picks in the draft and the free agency moves, this is it, guys. Like, unless there's a big Trey Lance trade coming in a month or 2, or Dalvin Cook could be on the way out for picks, but this is kind of it. Yeah.
So I think that of the list that you went through of the guys who have departed, the only guy that if they could have afforded to keep him, they would have is Dalvin Tomlinson. Like, I think that's a loss. I'm not saying he was great, but I think he was a solid player. Outside of that, no, I'm fine with it. I love the makeover. It's 3-0 now.
Did they just score? Wait,
at the buzzer.
They just beat the buzzer? No.
Yeah.
Oh my God! They literally scored at the buzzer of the second period.
At the buzzer. Yep.
Oh.
Breakaway by Mason Marchment, who has had an. Anyway, I like what I like what they have done as far as shifting the roster in a different direction. Tomlinson, I think that they would have kept, but for their salary cap problems. But I love the direction of doing what actually Thor at one time Spielman tried to do himself, which is they are really trying to get guys who are either in their first contract or second contract. And once you get past that, and it's harsh, but it's true in football, you start to decline. So I like this. If you're thinking it's going to result in the Super Bowl championship in 2023, unfortunately, you need to put the hookah pipe down.
For sure. Yeah. If you guys have a second, I would like to give you the list of cornerbacks who had a higher PFF grade last year than Mekhi Blackmon that are in this draft class. If you just have a minute.
Oh, we have, yeah. Well, I think we get about 5 minutes in us here, and then I think the Judd's Hockey Show crew needs to turn its attention to the burial of the Minnesota Wild.
Periods now. So
okay, well,
go ahead.
You'll have time for
I
this.
need to post a Purple Daily.
Devin Witherspoon,
yeah.
Nobody else.
Wait,
the fifth pick in this draft.
So Devin Witherspoon is the only player with a higher PFF grade.
Correct.
Wow. Interesting. I'm seeing some really fascinating stuff here too. Like he'd go out of his way to try and match up with Jordan Addison in practice every day at USC, which is kind of cool.
So they're tight. That's good.
He doesn't. Here's some analysis from Dane Brugler, NFL analyst from The Athletic. Quote, doesn't get bored. Receivers know they're in for a dogfight when lining up across from Mekhi Blackmon.
Sound like a Brian Flores cornerback to you?
He does, yes. And Brian Flores schematically makes it not boring. You could get bored in that Ed Donashell scheme, right?
That's for sure.
Okay, I'm just going to sit back here and
what just happened?
See what happens.
That was a long completion.
I like it. I like it on paper here. And so before we say goodbye to you, Thor, and by the way, thanks again for jumping on here.
You got
it. And just bringing some intelligence to our babbling nonsense on Purple Daily here.
Yeah, it's true.
As you look ahead now, the Vikings so they did pick up an extra pick. So they have 5 picks, I guess, tomorrow. They've got their 4th, a couple 5ths, a 6th and a 7th or something like that.
Yeah.
So who are some guys here that you would have your eye on? The 119, the 158. Who should they be earmarking here?
So I'm gonna keep saying Adebaware for sure. Like he didn't go yet in those past couple, did he?
I don't think so. Let me pull it up here.
Yeah. So
no, Cameron Latu, Trey Tucker, Jake Moody, and then Mekhi Blackmon.
Okay. Yeah. We talked about some of the corners there, going lower on guys that we hadn't discussed yet. Offensive line depth, DeJuan Jones, he's a 2nd-round player, the Ohio State right tackle, who would remind folks around here quite a bit of Phil Lodeholt. It's like the same sort of thing, just like a behemoth who's really good, blocking the run. Obviously, tackle's not the biggest thing, but like he also, anyway, like he would just be an objective steal as far as the slot. We brought up Herbig before, talking about the linebacker. You're going to move on from Jordan Hicks after this year. Herbig might even be able to challenge him for playing time right away. So he would be another guy that I would look at. Trying to think if there's any other guy. Well, the other one that we had to running back, right? Like because of, the thing of, I think Dalvin Cook is going to be moving south on June 1st or June 2nd. Roshan Johnson would be a guy to monitor the complimentary back for Bijan Robinson. And in between the tackles, Grinder guy who is really good in pass pro. Israel Abandokonda from Pitt is a home run hitter. Like the straight line speed is just absolutely fabulous with him, super explosive. And then Evan Hall, the local kid, is the guy that I really want because of the receiving versatility. I think he would be a really good fit with the Vikings, the backs that they already have there, complementing their skill sets. And you're going to be able to get Evan Hall a bit later than those other 2 guys. I'd be surprised if Roshan and Israel Abandokonda don't go at the top half of the 4th, whereas Evan Hall, maybe the 5th round you can get him. Who knows? Maybe even the 6th, but like 5th round probably to be comfortable. Those would be the guys I'd look at.
Awesome.
The picks left. Round 4, the Vikings are picking at 119 from the Lions. Round 5, they have 2, 158 and 164. 164 came tonight in the San Francisco trade. Round 6, 211 compensatory pick that they have. And round 7, another one from San Francisco, 222. So 1 in the 4th, 2 in the 5th, 1 in the 6th, 1 in the 7th.
Go get one. Go get a starter. Go get a starter with one of those 5 picks.
And get Jared Clark, our boy from Coastal Carolina, and platoon him with Tonga in year 1.
Love it.
Are you saying it's Tonga time?
Yeah.
Like Tonga time.
Yeah.
That's a nice player.
Yeah. Jared Clark's underrated.
That might be a t-shirt. By the way, 15% off. 15% off everything in the Score North and Purple Daily shop. Promo code DRAFT all the way through the weekend, through Sunday. ScoreNorth.com/shop. That's ScoreNorth.com/shop. 15% off using the promo code DRAFT. Thor, awesome stuff, man. Take
You're
a bow.
You
You've been
are
great.
awesome. Thank you. Great job last night too.
Appreciate
Purple
you, boys.
Daily on draft. You can hear Thor, and we'll get Thor on for one more reckless draft speculation episode to recap everything on Tuesday. And then you can find him also on Purple Daily on Draft going forward with Tyler Fornes and Declan and all of his main work at fantasypros.com, bettingpros.com, and his Twitter account is ThorKU. So go give him a follow. All right, sir. Go get a couple hours of sleep and prepare for day 3.
He's chipper, man. He looks great.
You look fresh, man. You look fresh.
You do.
Yeah.
You don't look like you're phased at all. This is your time of year.
Oh man, yeah. No, I'm excited to get back up at it. We got a lot of picks coming tomorrow, so
Look at
we'll see
you.
how it goes.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go, baby.
Day
This is where you
3 is
make your
like is
money.
where the real hardcores I think get their jolt from. So all right, Thor, appreciate
All right,
it, man.
boys. Hey, appreciate you.
And so that puts a bow on. I love the Vikings. 4 hours. We'll just make the last pick. Don't worry about us.
And now I see people demanding that Judd's hockey show start immediately. Give me the third period, okay? I got to process this.
All right, yeah, Judd's in the
I
arena
got
here,
some
so.
stuff too, unfortunately.
And Declan has actual work to do.
Yep. So, all right, thank you guys for hanging out with us here tonight on this Friday night. The
Sorry about the
Minnesota
lighting.
Vikings have made 2 selections so far with a handful more tomorrow. And we're going to sign off here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel, but you can find Judd's Hockey Show on the Score North YouTube channel after this game is over. Or maybe even if it's 5-0 at some point, maybe you guys do start early. But thank you. Daily Vikings Entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. See ya.